Okay, so first of all, I want to say thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. You and I, it was kind of a while ago. What was that? Back in September, we ran into each other at the JCast symposium, or when was that?
Yeah, I think in the summer. It was in the summer. I
Yeah,
guess that sounds about right. September, JCAT Symposium in Virginia Beach.
right, yeah. Yeah, it was good seeing you. I hadn't seen you in a while, and it was cool to run into you and Calvin, and that was fortunate because I got to coordinate this thing. So I'm glad were able to come on. Um, so yeah, go ahead and take over, and let's hear how you got in the military, and we'll just go from there.
Well, first of all, appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to doing this. I watched all your episodes, not all your episodes, but many of them, and I think you're doing a good thing for the career field, and just backing up our history and seeing some of the guys that have done some amazing things, and a lot of things that I had forgotten about. See those videos and see what people are doing. A lot of fun times, a lot of mostly great good memories, and I don't know. So I appreciate you doing that. But um, as for me, pre-military, I just like everybody else, high school trying to decide what I want to do, and grew up in Virginia, out in the country, about an hour and a half or so west of DC, in the Shenandoah Valley, God's country as I like to call it,
All right.
and try to get back there as much as possible. But I grew up there. My dad was prior Marine, and not he didn't talk about it too much. He was a Vietnam era Marine. He had plenty of Marine Corps stuff around, Globe and Anchor, and he was proud of being a Marine, but he didn't talk about that too much. So it wasn't like military was a big pushed thing, but it was always, it was always a big thing in our family. My dad was a Marine. My uncles were all in the Army or Marine Corps, and World War II and Vietnam and Korean War, and so it was there, but it wasn't something that everybody talked about.
Sure.
And we spent a lot of our weekend times down at the American Legion and the VFW, and those kind of events and stuff like that. So it was a big deal, and it was a small town. How it can be in small towns. Everybody rallies around that and the flag and all that stuff. So
Sure.
I but it's not I'd never really thought about going in the military period. But as time goes on through high school and whatnot, you start straying from things a little bit, and maybe I wasn't necessarily keeping my studies up exactly the way I was supposed to, and
Right.
by the end of 11th grade, it was I had gone from being an A student to a not A student,
Okay.
to say the least.
No,
And
yeah.
but so, and some of my friends had they were talking about going in the Air Force and different things like that, and I was on the track to go to college, but it was apparent that I was just going to waste my parents' money that they did not have.
All right.
If I had gone to college, I just wasn't ready for it. Maturity, call it what you will, but I was interested in partying and drinking beer and doing
Right.
all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I also knew that I didn't want to hang around a small town and try to get a job and do that. I mean, I had done plenty of summer jobs where I was the last few summers in high school. I was a concrete worker. Worked for my best friend's dad. He had a concrete company, and that manual labor. I knew exactly what that was all about, and I knew I did not want to do that. So,
All right.
so my buddies are going over to the Air Force recruiter, and I'm like, maybe I'll tag along. And one thing led to another, and after a couple meetings, I was signed up in the Air Force.
Nice.
So, and I listen a lot of listen to the stories, and people always start off on your show by telling how they got in, and how they got to TAC P
Right.
ultimately. And for me, it was just luck of the draw, really, because my plan was to go in as an air traffic controller. Um, Go in as an air traffic controller, have a stable job or something, do 4 years and learn a skill, come back and go to work at Dulles Airport. That in my small brain at the time, that seemed like that was the plausible thing to do.
Right.
And the recruiter was like, yeah, you can do all that, that's fine, but I just we don't have that job open right now here. But when you get down to Lackland, you can choose it. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds fine to me. And
I
so,
can't believe they say that to everybody. They
oh yeah,
the big
so
lie.
I like many people do, I went in open general, and knowing what that means now and knowing how it could have turned out, it's just scary. But
Oh yeah.
but yeah, so I left open general, and you know I came back from the recruiter that day, told my mom and dad, driving driving through town in the car. I'm like, yep, I signed up for the Air Force today. And my mom was like, you did what? Because I hadn't talked to them about it at all. They had no idea that was even, cards on the table.
Oh, really?
And that was in November of my senior year in high school. So I was delayed enlistment until next, the following August. I asked if I could have the summer,
Yeah.
and go, like, yep, we can ship you out August 15th, so 88. So delayed enlistment, I was on it for a while, but I was still in high school. So off I went, open general, and down to Lackland I go, just like everybody else. And I thought it was humorous, the way that basic brand. I was expecting Paris Island.
Right.
That's what you get. That's what you get in your brain, and then you get there and it's Air Force, and it's like, well, it seems like we're more concerned about folding T-shirts and those kind of things. But the attention to detail that gets driven into you, and I already kind of had that, from my mom and dad, anyway. So that was no big deal. But just the people who struggled was eye opening to me. How just people struggle through that. But,
How was the PT anyway, for you? Was it a joke like in '91 when I went through?
Yes, yeah, it was there. I don't know if they did this for every class or what, but it seems like they would have like a field day kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like kind of like track and field, or the different events or whatever, and
right.
You could sign up to do some of that stuff or whatever. So that allowed me to get out and do some extra running.
Right.
Be able to just do that, but like I said, I wasn't planning on going TAC P or anything. I none of that was in my mindset, so it wasn't like I was getting ready for anything. I mean, I was athlete in high school, a soccer player, and a cross country runner and track runner, and that kind of stuff, and played football when I was little league age football, and then everybody kept growing and I didn't, so I moved on to maybe I can just run away from people. So that's kind of where I concentrated. That's what I concentrated on. But anyway, in Lackland, and still trying to figure out what your job's going to be, and I'm still telling everybody in the class, or our flight or whatever, yeah, I'm going to be an air traffic controller. That's what I'm here for. And you go to the career day or whatever, and they talk about choosing you see the in-house recruiter there, I guess, and they line you up with a job or talk about what your job's going to be, and then you find out later and go to they assign you tech school. And back then, they had the PJ recruiter come in and talk to us, and the combat control recruiter come in and talk to us. But at the time, there was no TAC P recruiter. This was long before, I want to say Warren Gardner was probably the first one that did that job.
Yeah.
That time frame that I remember. And that wasn't until several years later.
Sure.
And there may have been someone else before that, but I knew Warren did it for a while. Matt Busan did it.
Mm-hmm.
I think J-Mac did it for a while too.
Right. Right.
But none of that was there. So I'm listening to the briefs that combat controllers are giving. I wasn't interested in the medical stuff on the PJ side, although they did a lot of cool things. Medical, angle didn't appeal to me, but the combat control stuff really did. I mean, that guy laid it on thick, and he talked about scuba diving and parachuting and just shooting guns and doing all the fun stuff. And
right.
I was hooked. I was hooked pretty quick and listening to what was going on, and yep. They're like, so if you want to do this, volunteer, come down, take the pass test. If you make it through the pass, then you get to go to tryouts or OLA or whatever it was called at the time.
Yeah.
And I get back to the dorms that night, and we were back to the barracks, and we still hadn't selected our jobs or talked to the Air Force, the in-house recruiter that was going to be the next day. So the plan was to get up that next morning, go do the pass for combat control, and then that I would be on my way. Combat control school. So I thought, and then it just somewhere that evening I just thought about it. I'm like, man, you want to come in to be an air traffic controller, you just stick to your guns. Stick to your guns and be an air traffic controller. Don't go after the shiny ring or what sounds cool. So I did not go to take the pass test, and I just went to see to get signed up to be an air traffic controller. Get there, and that guy tells me, I don't know what your recruiter told you, but that's not an option, and there are no openings for that. You got to be guaranteed, and there's a somewhat of a process for that to happen beforehand. So pick 3 jobs, and I said, well, what about combat control? Can I go back then? Like, yeah, you already missed the boat on that one, but you can always cross train later. That right. Kind of mentality. I'm sure there's more discussion than that, but you're down there basic training. You don't you might every answer was 2 or 3 words. It was just yes sir, no sir.
Right, right.
There was not a lot of arguing. But so I'm like, okay, pick some jobs, and I think I chose aerospace ground mechanic. Yeah, aerospace ground engineer. I think age or whatever age stood for at the time. I found it cool. I didn't realize it was being a generator mechanic. Glad I didn't get that one. And I was struggling to pick out jobs, and the guy said, "Well, how would you like to be? How would you like to control airplanes from the ground? I know you want to be a air traffic controller, but how would you like to control them from the ground?" Like, well, where else would I control them from? I don't know what that means, but oh, okay, yeah, sign me up for that. And what I didn't know, that I know later on, you find out that if you came anywhere close to talking about TAC P or selecting TAC P, that you were going to get it because they were looking for people, and especially back then it was there was no recruiters or any none of that stuff. They were just trying to get people in the career field.
Right.
So they start handing out tech school assignments and telling us what we got, and they tell me I'm going to Hobart Field, Florida, and be in the Tactical Air Command and Control Specialist career field. I had no idea what that was, and everybody else is going to the standard tech school bases back then, which there were many back then, and now I think back then it was Lowry and Shepard and Keesler, of course, and everybody was going to those typical bases, and there was me and one other guy that were John Seidel. We were heading to Hobart, so away we went, and I remember the paper that they gave us, the document. It said, control airplanes, may have to work with the Army, may get to control or may get to use weapons, and you get to wear a black beret. Like that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what this is all about. And then we show up to tech school, and then it was that was a different world. That was not the Air Force that we had known for for 6 weeks anyway, whatever the basic training was. You could tell the mindset was different, and I just fell right into it, and I like, let's get after this. But that first day in the dorms, walking through the dorms, a guy named Joey Frady was there in the hallway, and he was one of the senior flight ahead of us, what have you. And he was talking about air traffic control school, or he was talking about combat control, and he said, yeah, he had washed out of combat control school, and that's why he was at TAC P school. That's what he, and he was a cross trainee. He was actually a security forces guy, but which I didn't realize if you failed out of a cross training job, I assumed that they would just send you back. But somehow he made his way to TAC P school, and he said he failed out at combat control school, and so I asked him what happened. Why'd you fail out? Swimming? You just assume swimming because that's what everyone gets most guys in the beginning. He said no, he failed out of air traffic control school, and I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, I failed out of air traffic control school. I said, I get that you failed out, but why were you at air traffic control school? I thought you were going to be a combat controller.
I remember you talking about this.
It's like, they're certified air traffic controllers. That's part of the job. They're tower certified. It's back, they went in and out of being tower certified and not tower certified.
Sure.
But back then they were tower certified. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You're telling me that recruiter never said one thing about being about controlling or, being air traffic control. So,
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe I would have been a combat controller. Maybe I wouldn't have made it through. Who knows? But, that was the thing then. And kind of stuck with me. And I'm very loyal. I'm just the way I am. And I said, well, you're here at TAC P now. Just stick it out. And, I've held animosity towards combat control ever since then. Not the people that it's there, because I've got lots of combat control friends. At least that one recruiter who didn't mention air traffic control.
Right.
But who knows? I think it all worked out for the best. I'm happy with how that started out. Getting to do the job, and that was okay by me. So that's kind of how it all started. Made it happen for 28 years. So
Yeah.
I guess something went right in the beginning because maybe I'm just, like I said, loyal and stubborn to a fault. But
Right.
I think we all found something that we liked doing it, or we wouldn't have kept doing it.
Oh, for sure.
So that was it. And then it was tech school. We all have our tech school memories, and it was I personally thought tech school was a blast. Once again, I was amazed at the people who struggled with it and the things they struggled with. Most of them struggled with the fact that they just didn't want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
Pretty much what it boiled down to. But and the PT was good. It was difficult and it was challenging, so I like that.
Yeah.
The running was good, and and then you start meeting some of the instructors, and we had I think had a good set of instructors there at the time. Brian Brock and Johnny Kleber and Ron Myers and just a whole bunch of it was just a good crew.
Yeah, solid guys for sure.
Todd Kessler, rest in peace, and remember Bill Martin. I don't know if you
Yeah,
if Bill Martin was there.
I do remember him. Yep.
Oh gosh, he was the radio instructor at the time. We were still learning back then. We were still learning the 107 and 108
All
palette.
right.
That was that dude. He made. I did more boot slappers for that guy in the back of the classroom for falling asleep. I was like, oh, I just can't stay awake in this. It's
Right.
killing me. Kind of funny, but that big ass radio palette, I remember. I thought it was a mock-up. I thought it was like a blown-up version of what we were actually going to use, and it was just like they
Like,
were
surely this giant thing can't be it, right?
it can't be, that can't be. They're like, no, this is it, man. I'm like, wow, this. I mean, what was it like, 1965 technology? I mean,
Right.
I think it was outdated. That stuff was outdated in the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
But after you learn about it and you figure out how powerful that HF radio was, and compared to what we use now and how we make things happen now, I mean, that thing was pure brute force
Oh yeah.
of a radio. Everything was just amped up to the max. I think that on the 107, I think it was 300 watts or something like that. You had to have protection around the antenna.
Right.
But yeah, Bill Martin was. I just remember him and just his mannerisms and that stuff. I would later work for him back down at the schoolhouse when he was the commandant down there for a while. But
Okay.
he was a different guy for sure. Good leader in his own right, and I remember him as like I said, when I went back down to the tech school later as an instructor, he picked up some things from him for sure. But that was tech school, and I guess we knew on the first day what assignment we had, and unless you volunteered for airborne, whatever they told you on that first day, that's pretty much what you got. And we got 5 of us got there all at once from basic training, and every one of us except for one got Fort Hood, and the other guy got Fort Bliss.
Mm.
So, and we didn't know anything about it at the time, just it was in Texas, and I didn't know
Right.
anything about Texas, but then they said there's the option to go airborne, so let's give that a try. But that did not work out the way I wanted it to. There were only 2 airborne assignments that they gave out, and Scribner and Anderson. Those guys got there before I did, and they were great guys. I was the number three option.
Yeah,
Those 2
okay.
guys just had a leg up on me. I think we all had about the same PT. We all had the same PT score. I know it was we all maxed it out, but we all same grades. It was just they had to pick 2, and that's the 2 that got picked.
Okay.
So that's the way that went. So little did I know how big of a deal that was going to be,
Right.
going forward. Not that things. I'm glad the way things turned out and the way things happened, but it made the first assignment. It made a big difference on the first assignment, that's for sure. So off I went to Fort Hood, and Fort Hood was a good assignment. It was a good learning assignment on learning how to do at least the technical portions of the job, the radios and all that stuff. But as far as being a gung ho, go get 'em attitude base, it was not that at all. I mean, it was night and day from tech school. It was culture shock getting there, to be honest. Got there, and my brigade, I went to first brigade, right? I know I went to first brigade, but they were all out on some exercise or whatever, so we were just kind of in limbo those first few days, and it was I don't know if it was just the other brigade, just all the maybe of the leadership in that brigade was just not what it should have been, but
Yeah.
but it was like, holy cow, what have I gotten into? This is not what I expected at all. There was a PT program. There was just no. I think about that now, that there's no even any Air Force squadron that doesn't have a PT program, but
Right.
a TAC-P or But luckily, those guys got back from the exercise. Met my first supervisor, which was Tony Carter, and TC Carter. That dude was awesome, really good leader. And then Jimbo Wilson was the brigade NCOIC, and he was a good leader too. But holy cow, that dude was I don't know, it was like he was perpetually on speed. In fact, we called him Speedy Wilson. And that dude, anybody go do this, do that, mow the grass, clean that radio, do this, and just slow down, man, slow down. But like I said, that assignment, there wasn't there wasn't a lot of extra stuff being done. We weren't airborne, so you didn't have that aspect where that takes up time to go do that. There was very little JTACing. There was no JTACing going on. I guess it was even pre-ETAC really, but
Yeah.
that was just about the time frame when the enlisted guys were starting to control air. But that wasn't even really talked about or heard about. You knew that that's was part of the job, and the ALOs did that, and the BALOs, whenever they linked up with us, they would do that. And some of the enlisted guys did it, and I maybe remember those guys going on one trip or one cast trip or something. That we weren't. The younger guys didn't go on, but it was just make sure your truck's clean, make sure your radios are ready to go. Other than that, we did nothing but go four-wheeling in the Humvees, and the rest of the time we just drank beer and partied. That's that. I mean, and don't get me wrong, it was fun. It was gotten probably too much fun. I know at that time Scott Loescher was my running buddy and down there, and how we made it out as two of the guys to make chief. I will that is back then you never would have guessed that.
Yeah. Did you watch his episode? He was just on recently. I did. Yeah. He mentioned you. He mentioned you guys were rowdy.
Holy cow! I mean, they're just like any other base, and with TACPs in general, or that mentality. But holy cow, we'd go out, do whatever we were going to do, or hang out, and we'd get back to the dorm room, and immediately it'd be like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and immediately take a shower, get in uniform, and then we'd sit in the chair by the door with the alarm clock on our shoulder. And we were like 5 minutes, to run to the shop. And that alarm, we had to be there at 7:30 or whatever, and the alarm would go off at 7:20, and we'd just run out the door.
You know what? There's no way you're the only one. I mean, I've done very similar things to that. Get in at like dark 30, and you just get dressed, ready to go. Your shoes are right there, and just so you can sleep as long as possible. Yeah.
I mean, it was like a skill.
Yeah.
We had done it so many times, because the alternative was you're late, and then you got to hang out with Jim Wilson on the weekend.
All right.
Weed eating, and doing whatever details, painting rocks or whatever they wanted you to do. So right. There was, the consequences were direct and right there back then. But we ran hard, and then luckily for us, I think the leadership I had in the brigade I was in versus the leadership that Scott had and the Loescher had in the other brigade, the guys on my side looked out for me. There were times when I should have been in more trouble than what I was, and when it came EPR time, I had nothing on my EPRs that looked bad.
Okay.
Good EPRs. Scott was the opposite, but we were doing the same exact things. It was just and like I think he even said in his episode, that was in a time frame when the EPR crossover was, and there was really they didn't know how, because the word on the street was there's this new EPR process, and we're going to rate everybody like they're supposed to be, and a 3 is a good EPR. That's good. That's where we're, the meat. Most of the reports are going to be around the 3.
Right.
To get a 4, you're doing great. If just like all the rest of those EPR, APR, OPR, all that shit, just gets inflated over time. And so he, like I said, he had it worse than I did. And but what really saved both of us, I think, was Desert Storm, Desert Shield, because we got out of the country where we couldn't do anything but concentrate on doing our job.
Right.
So, but before that, of course you do regular exercises, going to NTC, doing all that stuff, and that those were great experiences, and you start seeing outside things and what people are doing out in the other people placed in the career field, and that was back in the time frame when we were the Russian scenario, and that whole Fulda Gap, and
Cold War type stuff,
and Cold Wars, all that stuff was, that was our mission set then. But we were going to the desert, going to NTC to the desert to train for that mission, because that's that's where you did it. And obviously, it's not Germany, and there were, I think there was another, there were two squadrons on Fort Hood at the time. We were with First Cav, and then there was one for 2AD as well. And those guys, not only did they go to NTC, but they also got to participate in reforger and all that stuff going to Germany. But for whatever reason, first cab didn't never did that. But we, got to go to NTC and see how how it works and get out. You figure out that holy cow, I got an APC. I didn't know I had an APC. I mean, that's how distant from the Army we were, and how not turned into it. I mean, I had we would take our Humvees over and drop them off at maintenance, but other than that, we never talked to the Army. I mean, I knew some of the mechanics better than I knew the S3 or the FSO or the
Right.
or any the brigade or the battalion commander, whatever. You just until we went to NTC, and then you're like, oh, this is how it's supposed to work, and we're tied into these guys, and we live with them, and we move around, and and then it kind of like, this is more what I thought it was going to be like. And besides the fact that you're at NTC in July and it's 129 degrees, it was fun. It was actually getting to do the job on some level.
Yeah.
And and that aspect of it being out in the desert obviously helped us a lot whenever Desert Shield and Desert Storm came along and we went to the desert.
Right.
So that was that's what pretty much saved Scott and I, because I mean we were going down the bad road at the time. But like I said, I had more people helping me out than he probably did. But we got Desert Shield, Desert Storm. That was we got notified, I think in August or whenever was it August, in July, August, whenever they invaded Kuwait. I think it was August, and shortly thereafter, everybody kind of goes on alert, and we knew that we were going to be going at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when, so we started gearing up and convoying all of our stuff down to the port and putting it on the ships and on the boats to send it across, and hopped on some contract airplanes and headed off to what I thought was going to be, we're heading into war, so this is it. I guess at the time frame from being in, the only thing that had really happened up to that point was Just Cause in Panama.
Right.
That had happened, and a bunch of guys had participated in that, and we got to see and talk to those guys. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for them, that's what it was. It's, hey, we're on the war, and they took off and immediately jumped right into combat.
Right.
For the most part, so in my mind, we're kind of thinking, we're going to Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, wherever we're going, and are we going to step off this plane and be shooting at each other, or
Yeah.
how's this going to work out? But as everybody knows, it turned out to really sitting in the desert for 6 months for about 100 hours worth of mission.
Right.
But probably learned the most in that 6 months about the career field and doing the job. Probably learned, that condensed 6 months probably more than any other time throughout my career, because I mean you had to figure shit out, and
Right.
Things that I had never done before, just make it happen, TACP style kind of stuff. We I remember breaking down those split rim tires in the middle of the desert with a crowbar, and just finding tires out in the middle of the desert, because those old bias tires that we had on the Humvees back then were just we were losing them left and right. Just doing stuff like that out of necessity, and using our GPS to cruise around and find where the Vogel PX was, so we could buy cigarettes in Copenhagen to trade back a battalion. That was
Right.
that was always a good thing. And I think we maybe talked about that before, but the GPS at the time was very new.
Right. Right.
We had just learned it. We got a class on it. I think Mike Matthews got the trainer course, and he came out and taught us all how to use it like 5 days before we deployed. And it was the big PSN8, the one that looks like a car battery,
Right.
telephone coil. And
Yeah,
that
the
thing,
controller, whatever the controller.
the controller was. And that thing was awesome. I mean, I didn't care how big it was because it was in my truck.
Right.
It wasn't like I was carrying it. It wasn't like I was carrying it. Now,
Sure.
had we been at the light infantry at the time, maybe I wouldn't have liked it so much.
Right.
But we had that, and it was the first maybe not the first GPS, but the first GPS that we had issued to us that tracked 4+ satellites at a time. So it was always searching for the next satellite. So which didn't have full coverage anyway, because I think there were maybe 16 or 18 satellites up at the time, and now I think there's 24, 25, or whatever it is now. But there were several hours in the middle of the night when we had no coverage.
Oh,
So
okay.
So in the Army's GPS that they had at the time was called the Trim Pack or something like that, but it only looked for three satellites, and as that third satellite dropped out of sight, you had to manually make it go find the next satellite.
Oh, really?
And so so it was like very user intensive, and it wasn't as accurate. So, and once the Army figured that out, and in the battalion, we had the only one.
Yeah.
So they got us doing a bunch of stuff that we probably should not have been doing, just because we knew where we were at.
Yeah, yeah.
But leading up to that, it was the first time we used this thing. So that's how we, really figured out how to use it, was that 6 months prior to that we're sitting out in the middle of the desert. We just punch in a coordinate and it would give you, left and right arrow.
Sure.
Didn't tell you, it didn't give you, it wasn't like today where, you got a little screen.
Yeah.
Shows you where you're driving in 3D view and all that stuff. It just said left 5 degrees or right 5 degrees. We would hear that, there was the mobile BX or the phone center or whatever you wanted to go to. We'd get coordinates for it, punch it in, and just start driving. We'd tell the battalion, hey, we're going to a meeting at division, and we just went out exploring Saudi Arabia.
Nice.
Driving through the desert looking for cigarettes in Copenhagen, and neither of which I wanted, but I knew everybody else wanted it.
Sure, good trading material for sure.
It was good trading material. But carton of Newports that go a long ways, and old 332 battalion. But
right.
So that's what we did. And it was me, Tony Carter, and PJ or PK Adams. PK Adams was our Balo, and our Balos at the time came out of Panama before it actually shut down. They shut the squadron down on those guys before they even returned. So when my Balo, when he returned to Panama, I mean, all of his stuff was boxed up and gone. So he just went and basically out processed and went to wherever he went. But yeah, the three of us just drove around and really got got pretty solid bonds between the three of us, and it was learned how to use that GPS, and then that ended up getting us into a lot of situations with the battalion going forward. I mean, they have us in position to lead us across the border through the fire pits and all that shit, because I'm like, I know that's what you want. We'll set up somewhat, we can guide you through, but no, I don't think PK didn't want that anyway. Yeah, so we're driving around using the GPS, and that led to the battalion deciding how we would line up, or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
how we would move. So at that time, we spent most of the six months in the desert in Saudi Arabia. We were south of the Tapline Road. I think KKMC is the military base that's close by there, and then the ASOC was there, and we would go to the ASOC every now and then, get supplies, get a shower or whatever every
Sure.
now and then. But for the most part, we lived out in the desert, with showers and the 4-seat shitters with the diesel fuel underneath of them, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
because it would come from division or corps or whatever, a supply truck would come in and have wood on the back, and with some kind of crude plans on how to build a shower, how to build a shitter or whatever. So
Right.
they were pretty much all the same. Everybody had them, but it's when your wood showed up, so to speak, that and of course we helped out and all that. I didn't do it too many times, but I did burn barrels of shit a couple times, and I can say I did that. I don't know if you know Rick Band and Bill Dietz, but those guys got put on shit burning detail, and they ended up burning the whole shitter down. they burned the whole thing down, and the whole basically the whole HAC battalion headquarters company is pissed at them because they burned the shitter down.
Yeah, they got nowhere to go
Sergeant
now.
Major, Sergeant Major never asked them to do it again.
I guess
But
typical
yeah,
TAC P way of
burned-
getting out of doing stuff.
Yeah,
Just screw it up.
and that's kind of the thing. It's typical. We've always had the mindset that, hey, we don't do details, we don't do guard duty, we don't. It's kind of, you're always trying to find a way to convince Sergeant Major or whoever, that first sergeant or whatever, that we don't. We're not on those details.
Right.
But being out there and being with those guys for that long, and you're living right there with them, it's hard. You got to help out.
Sure.
We always took the position that if we don't have anything going on or whatever, we would help out. And I wasn't going to be responsible for guard duty for the whole perimeter or whatever, because that wasn't my job. But
Right.
as far as helping build stuff and
Just pitching in.
whatever,
Earning your
just
keep.
pitching in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and and we ended up with a really good relationship, solid relationship with that battalion. I think Colonel Maine was the company or the battalion commander, and we had, of course, we had the battalion sergeant major, command sergeant major, but headquarters company, instead of having a first sergeant, they also had a sergeant major who was the first sergeant, but I guess he had, I look back on that now and it didn't seem weird at the time, but going forward, I'm like, well, HHC usually had a first sergeant,
Right.
as opposed to, but he was a sergeant major also, and that guy would come over and hang out with us. And it was kind of funny because he'd come underneath our camo net, and he's like, I can take my helmet off in here, right? And I'm like, Sergeant Major, you can do whatever you want.
Whatever you want, man. Yeah, exactly.
He's like, I know how the Air Force has a no hat policy under their camo net. Like, okay, this is going better than I thought.
Yeah.
But we had gone into the little town of Hafra-Abatin and bought a wash machine, a little washing machine about it was about, I don't know, 3 feet wide.
Yeah.
And one side of it was a washing tub, and the other side was a spin, like it had a spin thing for it. And then we bought an inverter that we could hook to the batteries of the Humvee and power this thing. And you could, your full set of clothes, your full set of BDUs and socks and skivvies, and just one full set was about all this thing could handle. And but you could wash it and then put it in the best part was that spin cycle.
Uh-huh.
You had a spin cycle on the side, and because otherwise you had to wring your clothes out, and it took forever for them to dry.
Right.
But Sergeant Major comes over, and this thing was bright lime green. It was no way and we're trying to hide it. Driving from place to place, and got this big lime green washing machine on top of the Humvee. But we had it set up, and he comes over and he's like rubbing his chin. He's like, "How's it going today, Air Force?" Yeah. He's just kind of, what does he want? Because I knew he had to ask or whatever. I'm just trying to figure. He's just trying to make small talk, and he's like, "You think there's any chance I could wash a load of clothes in your wash machine?" Sergeant Major, you can wash a load of clothes anytime you want. So we were in his good graces for the rest of the time,
Nice.
just because of that. But he would come hang out with us and kind of give us some top cover whenever we needed it. So that was good. But kind of weird. I don't know. Not a weird thing, I don't guess. But shortly after Desert Storm, we were back at Fort Hood at Killeen, and I go to the 7-Eleven near my house, and he's working. That Sergeant Major is working at 7-Eleven.
Wait, was he still in, or was he retired, or?
No, he had retired. He had retired as soon as I got back, and he was working at 7-Eleven. I'm like, Sergeant Major, what are you doing here? And he's like, I wanted a job with no responsibility. And this is what I got. I don't know how long he did that, if that was transition or what, but he sold me a 6-pack of beer, and away I went. But that was kind of like, wow, you did not expect that.
Yeah, weird.
But like I said, we sat out in the desert for a long time, and you nothing else to do but figure out how to make your radios work. And we would go to control some airplanes beforehand and do some different things. And then we got to the point where we had moved up to the border, and the few weeks before the ground invasion actually started and the air war had started, we started doing probing missions into the Wadi Abatin, I think was the name of the wadi. We would go, but we would, they would send like company tanks at a time, and go up and just kind of do some probing, and artillery would fire, and I think it was more just to set in stone like that we were going to do a feint, and kind of showing the direction that we were going to go when it all kicked off. But it's just part of it was a feint, really.
Sure.
And started doing those missions, and that started getting more exciting, and some of those guys were actually controlling casts on those missions and taking fire. It was pretty uneventful for us, besides the artillery missions that that were going on for us. I know some of the other brigades were actually getting into contact prior to. For us, we only had one time where we had contact, and I think kind of ended up badly. The Apaches came in support and ended up shooting a Bradley and had a frat. And of course, it was organic support, so that they weren't being controlled by TACPs or anything like that.
Right.
They were just the way the Apaches worked, and that was. But we were listening to it on the radio, and we're thinking, oh yeah, this is awesome. They're taking it to them, and then you find out not so much. And that was kind of eye opening then. And it was around the time the air war started, and as we moved up to the border, and before that, all the shitters and all the showers and wash machines and all that stuff got left behind. In fact, we left TAA Horse towards the I guess right after Christmas. Right after Christmas, we were in TAA Horse, and we left there to move north. And Sergeant Major comes by and is like, "Hey, we got all these. We got these. We've dug out all the tank revetments, and where the tank revetments are, any gear that you guys don't want to take with you or you don't want to have, and everybody's sizing down. We're going to put all this equipment in these revetments and bury it." And I'm thinking, "Oh, okay," and didn't ask any questions. And we're carting around those old generators and all that stuff, and I never thought about them being on any equipment list or whatever, the thing, but we dumped all that stuff. I mean, all those big cables that used to go along, with running the pallet and the old generators we had, we buried all that shit in the desert and left it still there as far as I know, unless, but so we lightened up, and we left there, and, we were in the same uniform for the next 45, 50 days, and mop gear and no showers, and, it was all the way until it was from that point until the time it was over. That was the beginning of Desert Shield Storm for us. We did go through a period where we rolled our tanks over. We had just the regular M1s, and they switched to the A1s. They were upgrading from the 105 barrels to the 120s.
Okay.
And so they sent all the tanks, battalion by battalion. They moved all the tanks back to Daharan, and for swapping out the barrels and doing whatever. So and this was right around Christmas time, and Sergeant Major told us, S3's told us, hey, all these guys are going back with their tanks, so you guys might as well, go back to and get some hot chow and showers and do whatever. So that's when we decided that we would go to Bahrain. And Bahrain, at the time, they had a map center there, and the commander had told us beforehand, hey, if you guys need orders to do anything, and you need to use my signature or anything, do it. Do it. Don't hesitate. So in Belo, PK decides to write up some orders saying that we need to go pick up some maps from the map agency, because you had to have orders to get across the border. And we go out on, so we leave Saudi Arabia and are on our way to Bahrain. And, of course we wanted to go there because you can drink alcohol in Bahrain. And, and we had heard some people had gone there, and, it was, and I think about it now, everybody knows about Bahrain now, but back then, it was all this was foreign to me.
Sure.
But so we load up the Humvees, we got our weapons, we got all of our shit with us. And, I don't know why we didn't leave that stuff at Air Force Concern there at Dahran, but we took everything with us, 2 Humvees and 4 or 5 of us, and headed across the causeway, and we get to the border crossing in the center of the causeway out in the middle of the sea there. And they're looking at our orders, and they're looking at us, and the Jundi there just rolling the border crossing. He's just like, "I'm okay, you're okay. I'm okay, you're okay." And he couldn't say anything, the only English that he knew. And he just kept saying that. I'm like, "Well, I guess we're okay, but he's not letting us go." And then we see the blue lights coming, and we're like, "Oh gosh, this is not going to be good." They pulled up in the blue lights and gave us a police escort to the Navy base, and we went in, and the girl that worked at the billeting office hooked us up with some rooms at the Crown Plaza downtown.
Nice. And
we were there for Christmas Eve, Christmas, and the day after Christmas. So we were there for 3 days, and oh my gosh, I went to a WebTAC in 2006, 2009. I think I went to a WebTAC from we left Iraq and went down there, and we stayed in that same Crown Plaza, and it was like going back to the scene of the crime.
Oh yeah.
We showed up, and it was it's happy hour, and they it was 2-for-1 drinks. Of course, we hadn't had a drop of alcohol for 6 months,
right?
And and this is the first time they had Korean dancers dancing on the stage. Now, this is Bahrain, so it was pretty non-risque. It was
sure.
pretty tame, but there were Korean girls dancing, and some guy, I don't know if he was Korean or not, but something that he's singing Elvis songs, and they're dancing, and we're just in this place that's just we just partied down, and luckily we kept inside the hotel for the most part. But at one point I walked into the main kitchen of the hotel, like in the back restaurant. Because we're just wandering around at this point,
Yeah.
I lose everybody. I'm trying to find where everybody's at, and so I walk into this, the service kitchen or whatever, and there's Tony TC, and this big giant fridge opened up. I'm like, TC, what are you doing in here? He's like, I'm making a sandwich, man. So we're in the Crown Plaza, and then the people who work there come and start chasing us out, like, you can't be in here, freaking out. And I don't know. It was just they had a baby grand piano in the lobby, so we start playing that. Of course, none of us can play piano, so
Sure.
I don't. It was, but it was a fun time. But once we survived that, and there's a lot more to that story, but.
You don't need to go into it. Yeah.
There's a lot more to that story, but anyway, I make first time I'd ever punched a ALO, but but other than that, we worked it all out, and
Okay.
it was a good bonding experience.
Yeah.
It's a good bonding experience. So anyway, back to the desert we went, and it was we showed up right as everybody had gotten back. We were kind of the last ones to show up. Huge sandstorm, and that's when we moved north all the way up to the border, and shortly after that, and that was awesome in itself, is convoying up to the border and getting up there and doing all the refueling on the moves and that kind of stuff. And like I said, we had the GPS, so me and one of the battle captains were behind everybody, and every time a het, one of the hets would fall out because the drivers would just, hey, I can't drive anymore, I'm tired, and you'd have to, beat them into submission to get them to keep driving that shit north. Because they were just local contractors or whatever.
Oh, okay.
They would just stop out in the middle, stop on the side of the road and go to sleep, and like, in the convoy, you got to keep going, whatever. And I don't know why they did, and for whatever reason, they only had one person in each vehicle. I don't know why, I don't know. Either way, but that was our job, was to make sure everybody kept going, and if people fell out and broke down, then we would record their location, because we had the GPS, record their location. And so me and the battle captain are driving up there, and he decides he's going to make coffee in the Humvee. So he's got his Coleman, he pulls out the little Coleman stove, lights it up, and he's making coffee. And we go through a pothole, and that whole thing falls over.
I was gonna say, man,
It catches the door on fire. So now the door's on fire, and he's freaking out, and it's the back door. Not so he's in the passenger seat. I'm driving, and it's the back door, and it's because they weren't up armor Humvees or anything. It was just the old soft side. So we burned that door up, get it stopped, and use the fire extinguisher, get it, get everything taken care of. The seats, the cushion on the seat burned, that dude. Anyway, that's how we moved to the border.
Oh my God.
With me, I can't even remember that guy's name. He was a, I don't know. He's just one of those guys that was always into something, always talking. And I think the Army pawned him off on us because they didn't want to deal with him.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, he was one of the battle captains. Loud talker, just one of those dudes. But anyway, so we got get everybody up on the border, and we were ready to go, and the air war started. And then shortly after the air war started, they started firing Scuds into Saudi Arabia, and hit the barracks there at Riyadh or Dairan or wherever. I think it was Riyadh, I guess. And they were shooting Scuds back, several. And I'm out of the Humvee. I'm walking towards the TOC, and I see a missile flying through the air.
Jeez.
You see it, and then it explodes. Patriot battery, I guess, hits it, and it explodes right over top of us.
Oh man.
And I'm like, what the was that? Holy cow. And somebody comes out of the TOC and he's got the two camo poles, and they're banging them over their head. And the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, that means something. It's like the gears are turning, like,
Yeah.
oh shit, gas. So I'm like looking for my gas mask, and I don't have it with me. It's back in the Humvee.
Oh, no.
I'm always freaking out. I'm like, it's always on my side. But it wasn't. So so we mask up, and they said it was a false alarm. All the alarms went off, but it just so happened that it coincided with the Scud getting shot down right over top of us.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know. Like, you're telling me all the alarms had the same malfunction at the same time, but
Yeah.
Anyway, we were pretty much in mop gear from that point all the way through the end. And besides the fact that it was dirty and nasty because of the charcoal, it was
Oh yeah.
kind of helped keep us warm because it was pretty cold. So I mean, it was extra layer of clothes. So
Oh, right.
just didn't want to wear this. Just didn't want to wear the same one for. I mean, by that time it had started raining because of all the oil fires. I guess there's so much cloud covering just all that shit and just getting acid, oily rain.
Oh God.
All over us. The Humvees were covered. We were covered. It was pretty bad for
Yeah.
for 30 days or so. Just dealing with that. Eventually, we crossed the border and rolled through Medina Division, Talcana Division. Limited contact here or there. Got a few kill box controls, or I call them kill box controls now, but it's basically like they were basically Type 3 controls.
Mm-hmm.
What they call them, be like a Type 3 control now, which was kind of cool. Got to do that, and I don't know, I wasn't ETAC or JTAC at the time, but I was the only guy on the track, and it was me and the S3 and the driver and TC, and the tanks in the open and airplanes on station. So away we went.
Nice.
I tried to figure out why I was in the track by myself, and the Tony and TC and the Halo, they were in Humvee well behind us.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, that's not how we planned it, but that's how it ended up.
Mm.
I know the S3's track had broken down or rode with us for whatever reason, and of course we had the GPS, so we knew where we were at. And that was that. Besides that, all those little things happening. Desert Storm was pretty uneventful, but it was uneventful as far as actual intense combat goes. It was very uneventful. But as far as changing my mind about the career field and learning a bunch, and because pretty much from that point on, I was sold.
Yeah.
I was sold on the career field, and got back to Fort Hood and picked up right where we left off, back partying and getting crazy. And it was the only thing different was we we thought we had done something at the time. Hey, we're war heroes. We got right shoulder patches now, so
Right.
we are top of the world. And that lasted for a while, and eventually new guys come in and this, that, and the other, and you fall back into the same old, and it was back at Fort Hood again.
Yeah.
And that's when I started thinking about, well, I want to stay in. I know I want to stay in, but I want to get on the other side of the career field, because I knew what I knew from Fort Hood, but at that time, besides Desert Storm and Panama, those two things, the biggest test in the career field was the competition.
Right.
The worldwide competition. And I got to participate in that before going down, like I think in '89, or I guess they didn't have one in '90, so '89 I got to go to that one. As a young guy, and that's when you meet people from the other bases, and you start figuring out, hey, there's something else out there besides what's going on in Fort Hood, and you started meeting a lot of the good guys that that eventually would be the leaders of the career field. But at the time, they were young dudes, and they were just getting after it.
Yep.
Marty Klukases and Eric Kibbe and John Knight, Ron Myers, Matt Busan, and just all those guys that were, they were powerhouses down there, and I wanted to compete against those guys and
Sure.
do that. I was really into it. And the other thing was, if you were on the competition team, they would let you, we would train for it like a month or so in advance, and you'd get to do extra PT and kind of segregate it off by yourself and learning stuff in depth and doing all that stuff. And I was hook, line, and sinker into that. And then when we got back from Desert Storm, now then I really thought I knew something, and I really wanted to go down to compete and try to win, try to be real, try to do it the right way. And so doing all that and meeting the guys, those guys there, and figuring out I got to find a way to get to an airborne unit, because that seems to be the stepping stone to get into other places. And but at the time the mentality of the career field was, if you're an armor unit, you're probably going to stay at an armor unit. If you're your leg, how the career field was, it was legs and airborne. It was kind of if you were a leg, you didn't fit into that crowd.
Yeah, it's tough to get out of it.
And from our side, the leadership at Fort Hood at the time, their mantra was, those guys don't know how to do their job. The only thing they know how to do is jump. And that couldn't be further from the truth. But
Right.
You don't know that at the time, because that's all you hear. So you're like, well, okay, I guess that's all they do is jump. But
Yeah.
I knew that's what I wanted to do. So, and at the time, like I said, we were on top of the world. because we had come back from Desert Storm. We thought we were had done it all, had been there, done that, and couldn't tell us anything. And then back then it was before the ASOS structure, so we were part of 602nd Tactical Air Control Wing or whatever out of Davis-Monthan, and that we were a detachment out of there. So our chief was, Chief Soria. He was there. I think you were at DM at the time.
Yeah, when I first got to DM, I
Somewhere around that
met
point.
Chief. Yeah, it was like one of the first guys I talked to, besides Eric Harris.
What year did you get there?
I got there in '91. It's like fall,
91, so-
around October, I guess, maybe something like that.
So yeah, so it was still. I mean, it was still that structure back then at the time.
Mhm.
But Chief Soria, they did a visit to Fort Hood, and how chiefs do. Anybody got any questions for me, or what problems can I solve, and that whole kind of thing. And I asked him about getting airborne slots. What was there any chance that we could get slots to go to airborne school? And he pretty much told me, you will always be an armor guy. You will not go to airborne. If the way I want the career field set up is when you come in, if you're an armor guy, that's what you're at. That's your lane. And pretty much just shot us down, and just, it was such a negative tone that he said it in. I'm like, holy cow, who is this guy?
Yeah, like why would that ever be? I mean, I guess for some guys that's what they wanted to do, but why limit a guy? Like why say nope? You're never going to have an opportunity to do anything else. It seems weird.
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe he was thinking that would be the way to build the pride and mantra of the armor, the armor TACP or what. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he took it as me slighting what we were doing because we weren't doing that, but I was just simply asking,
Sure.
can we get slots to go to school, and then that would give us more opportunities to do other jobs down the road. But I didn't know how it worked or how it didn't work. But,
Right.
I just assumed I could not get assigned to Fort Bragg. I couldn't go to Pope at Fort Bragg unless I was airborne. So
Right.
I wanted to find out how to get airborne. But he kind of shot that down pretty quickly. And that was kind of a holy cow. Back to low morale, Fort Hood. When mantra is that's where old romance go to die. And but that eventually solved itself because I got orders and away I went. And I think like Loescher said in his in his discussion with you was they decided it was best to put us on opposite sides of the world. So
Right.
so that's kind of what happened. We got split up and never really got to work together again. Any other time. But he and I we did enough partying in those 3 or 4 years to account for the rest of the time.
Sure.
Then after that, it was off to Hawaii and got orders to Hawaii, and really haven't looked back since then because that really changed everything because that unit operated and ran the way a TACP unit should run, especially back then. The way it should back then. And and I think that tradition carries on there. I don't know if it's the Hawaiian era or what, but that place always seemed like it always had its shit together. There's issues here and there, but it was a good assignment, and it was they cared about the job, they cared about teaching you about the job, and any school you wanted to go to, if you could find a way to get to it, they promoted it, and that's what you did. We just trained all the time, and then surfed on the weekends, and that was pretty much it.
I never heard anything bad about the 25th or whatever it was when you were there. That unit had traditionally always had some really squared away guys, and then not just like, from all walks of life. Like you came from Hood. There's a lot of other guys that were not airborne, but they were still like just crushed it when I don't know what it was, but always top notch guys coming out of there for sure.
Yeah, I know. I think Matt Schleich and Matt Nugent were there.
Yep.
Tim Harrison and Jim Herron and Dennis DeLay and just a whole bunch of good dudes that helped shape the career field, and took over different spots, and like I mentioned about the competition before, and Jim Herron and Tim Harrison had won the competition a couple of years in a row.
Oh wow!
And they were there, so those guys, they were like heroes to me.
Sure. Right.
And then you find out that Jim Herron was, I don't know if it's 100% true. It's close. And not enough bad. He cross-trained in the career field, but as early, and he went to the competition and won that thing. And I think he'd only been in the career field for like a year and a half.
Oh, is that right?
You know what I mean? He was, that's just, caliber guy he was. I want to say he was a medical X-ray technician or something, or that's what he had. I don't know. I know he did that as a side job in Hawaii. So, but that dude was awesome, and and Ron Myers was there.
Yeah.
Who was a huge competition guy in Trevor Sock, and once then I got there and we kind of that's all we practiced and we studied and practiced and prepared for that competition year round.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we weren't, and then about a month prior we'd go to the Big Island and just do nothing but train at altitude to get ready to go to the competition. I learned more about minutia stuff, shit that they ask you about, just those little things, and all the little cards and Vizrecki and just all that stuff. I mean, I learned all that because of the competition.
Right.
And everyone should have been trained, but
for sure.
Just couldn't sustain it, and some people didn't, weren't into that and didn't want to do that stuff. But I know we were, and like I said, you go down there and you meet all kinds of people. I don't know. I think you had some pretty good level of success at the competitions yourself. I think.
Not too bad. Yeah, we did all right. Charlie and I won the Ruck March one year, and we did some pretty good stuff. Yeah. I thought that it was some people kind of thought of it as a boondoggle, but like you said, the train up for that boondoggle is like tough. I mean, it's not an easy thing. I mean, you're studying, you're working out. I mean, it was a hard go of it, I thought. I mean, it was fun. Obviously, we wanted to do it, but it wasn't easy by any means, And I know Paul Ford, when I was at Benning, Paul Ford just put us through the ringer. I mean, he and Marty Cooks had some success there, and he would just grill us day in and day out, just make sure we were ready to go. But no, I thought I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
And we tried to recapture some of the competition glory later years, but kind of after the war started and in earnest and all that. I mean, that stuff kind of the right people weren't available to go to the competition. There was just some different things that they tried to make it viable. It just never seemed to come back to prominence like it was. But and being on both sides of that thing, got to be on the instructor or administration side of the competition, and having competed in it, that was. I know the year Scott Myers and I went, and we couldn't be teammates. I'm still kind of bitter about that year, because we definitely would have won probably that year. But,
what was the deal? Who'd they pair you up with?
So we were at Lewis, and it was the rule that year. They didn't give out individual awards for anything. It was just team. Okay. And you couldn't have 2-3 levels, or you couldn't have. You had to have a 5 or 7 level in each team, or whatever it was. We had the two guys that were going with us were young guys.
Okay.
And basically, whatever the rules were, it ended up being me and John Deloney, and Scott and Jacob Bowers. I don't know who. I think it's who it was, but we got split up, and they wouldn't let us be a team. Now, what happened is they told us that beforehand, so we made the decision on who our teams were before we got down there. Teams were submitted, so we get there, and then we find out that other teams weren't following that rule. And I went to Brad. I think Kephart was running it that year, and I went to Brad Kephart and said, "We need to rearrange our teams." And he's like, "This is what Rock sent out." Rock Downing was the chief up at Lewis at the time. He's like, "This is what Rock sent down. That's what we're going with." So be it. Always. So
you should have known everybody was going to do that, though. You should have known that they weren't going to play by the rules. How are they going to? I mean, what are they going to look at training records and make sure these guys are who they are?
I don't know, but we were above board with it.
Yeah, I know. You guys played it straight. You did the right thing.
So that's how it goes. But it was those were good times. I love doing that. And
because you got to see all your buddies, and you got those are the times that you got to see the guys you were never stationed with. You go down there and you hang out, and you're like, it was a great time. I had a blast down there. There were plenty of partying and good times, and the reason people thought it was a boondoggle because we did have a good time. Sure. For the most part, you got to see different people, and but that was all part of it. It wasn't like that was the reason. Right. So. Well, I mean, think about it. Whether it was or it wasn't, you earned that right to do that. Like guys would train hard and study hard and get in great shape, and then you kind of get rewarded by having a good time. You know, like you go down there and you do your best, and you know.
Well, I think I told you the story last time. The Vizrecki cards and the program that used to, I mean, eventually they had like a slideshow or like a video thing you'd watch and do Vizrecki, and you know, the silhouette and seeing stuff at night, or it's looking at it through nods and training for that, you know, because that was always a big part of the competition. I think some years they would have the little models out and you'd look at them through your binos. And
Right.
some years it was the cards, and then some years it was just like the video played. You know, as technology got better, they got, you know.
Yeah.
I remember one year they had like airplanes hanging from the tree, and you know, little mock-ups. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so in Desert Storm, when we moved up across the border and got to the night of the ceasefire, you know, about 100 hours or whatever, a couple days into this movement, and the TOC had lined up, or we got to where we were on our the TOC stopped, and we were on our position on the clock, and we were at the 7 o'clock position, was, you know, kind of where we set up, and we're taking turns as we did, you know, who's up in the hatch for watch and all that. It was still, we had to have someone, at least one person on every vehicle.
Right, maybe like
you know.
33% security or something like that.
Yeah. So it was my turn up in the turret, and I'm up there, got the 50 cal, and everybody else is sleeping. And I see a vehicle moving, but it's moving inside the perimeter, and it's coming along, and I'm looking at this thing, and I got my nods out, and I'm looking, the old PVS-5s, I think.
Yeah.
Horrible. And I'm looking, I'm like, what is that? And I could tell it wasn't an APC. And I'm like, it's not a Bradley? Then you see that shape in the front, and I'm like, holy shit, that's a BMP. It's a BMP inside the perimeter. And I'm like, and I'm trying to figure out that's what it is. And, you know, I'm not going to open up with a 50 cal inside the perimeter,
Right.
shooting across the perimeter. And about that time, a Bradley swings around and puts 2 rounds into it, right in, like I said, in the middle of the perimeter. We were pretty spread out, but
Still,
blows
yeah.
this thing up, and it starts skirting across, and you know, swing around. Like finally, it stops, and it's like right behind us, and they go up. I guess it gets checked out. I do whatever, and we see it there the next day. But apparently, like I said, I from those Vizrecki cards and learning that silhouette, that shape, and everything, that's kind of what popped in my head when I saw that. I'm like, that looks like.
It's like you
a
just
BMP
remember that
just
shape.
right
Like that looks familiar.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like a US. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and
So what was the deal?
it
What
was the first
happened? What did they find in
we
there?
came in the middle of the night. It was, you know, in the middle of the night when we stopped and set up, and that guy was in a revetment in the middle, and we didn't know it, and we just came up and put a perimeter right around
My
right
God.
around him.
What bad luck
And I
for
guess
that
he
guy,
was-
man.
I guess he just decided he was going to try to sneak out in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I mean, if
don't
you
know,
waited
'cause-
until the morning, he'd have
'cause
been screwed.
They
Yeah.
all died. I mean, you know, nobody survived it, but yeah, it was right inside the perimeter. It's kind of weird, but yeah. But that was the competition up to that point. And then I left Hawaii and went to the schoolhouse after, you know, went to the schoolhouse as an instructor after that, and then got to be on the other side of it, which not as much fun, a lot more work,
Right.
but you know, the actual competition event was still pretty cool.
Yeah.
But in Hawaii, you know, other than training for the competitions, you know, I got to go to airborne school and air assault school, and a few different things, Marine Corps close combat course, and pretty light fighter school, and just any of those little classes or training things that were available, you could do them. And if we came back stateside for JRTC or whatever, you could always tack a school onto the backside of that if one was available. So
Nice.
they were good about that, and leadership there was, you know, awesome. Other than that, you know, Hawaii was, that's what we did. I guess we did uphold democracy, where we went down to Haiti and
How was that?
went down there. That was uneventful, dirty, but it was a good experience. It was Mitch Quinn, me, Greg Neely, Todd Swanhart, and O'Neill. Not Sean, but another O'Neill that ended up getting out
Okay.
shortly thereafter. I was a senior airman who I just made staff, but had not pinned on.
Okay.
So had not pinned on, and then Mitch was the master sergeant,
Right.
and we had come back from the competition, or we were on our way back. We were at the competition, me, Ron, and Trevor and Greg Neely. But on the way back, we went through Gila Bend for a 2-week cast trip.
Okay.
So we were at Gila Bend when all this kicked off, and you know, they're trying to figure out who's going to go. So I volunteered, Greg volunteered, and didn't know anything more about it. Then we get back to Hawaii, and Mitch had PCS then during that period, so I didn't know who he was.
Oh, okay.
And so Mitch is lining us up, and I'm like, holy cow, who is this guy? Because this guy's gruff as hell, and he is
Yeah.
he is not a happy guy. I don't know if that guy's has he got a splinter in his foot or something?
Right.
He's not happy. But I think we tried to figure that out. I'm like, oh well, we'll figure it out, and we get all set up. And one thing I learned about Mitch is that he always seemed like he had to have a target to release on, and I tried my best to make me be the target because he leaned in on Swanhart and O'Neill because they were the youngest guys.
Yeah.
He leaned in on them pretty hard, and finally pulled him aside, and I said, let's run this thing if possible. Let those guys work for me. I'll take responsibility for them. And everything you have, you just push it through me. And I think he respected that, and ended up it was easier on those guys.
Sure.
And I, kept him from being hard on those guys, and and he maybe because I put it that way to him that I don't know. He and I had a great relationship from that point on. He got us into some pretty cool situations in Haiti. I mean, there wasn't a lot going on at the time, we were actually supposed to be, I guess, the follow-on force, and 82nd was going to go do what they were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy Carter came in and saved the day, and it became a peacekeeping humanitarian mission at that point.
Right.
So they didn't go, we did.
Oh, the 82nd didn't go, but you guys still went.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think some elements of the 82nd maybe went, but they didn't jump in. They didn't go. They were going.
It wasn't like they were going like an invasion or anything.
Yeah. It was supposed to, So they were. I think some of those guys were on aircraft carriers waiting to go. They got that close down there. But for us, we flew in, got there, got established. Mitch quickly got us away from the Army, or got us closer to the Air Force, so we had better living conditions, and we still worked with the Army and was still there.
Sure.
But he anything the commander needed a volunteer for, he would sign us up for it. So on the Air Force side, those guys could never leave the FOB unless they had some kind of escort, some kind of armed escort. So we were doing convoy escort and that kind of shit,
Yeah.
I don't know. We talked to airplanes and figure out what you might do with them if something ever did happen. The stuff he really got us put into was paying the I don't know if they were civilian government workers or what they were, but they were I think it was the police force or the military force had not been paid in like a long time. So they were going out to pay these people. So we had to have security to go with them. So which is, it was an MP job.
Sure.
It was an MP job, but Mitch is like, well, we have AC-130s and everything on, that we can get on station. So we want to be part of this. And, so we're on helicopters flying out to where they're paying these people. And it's like, these people are riding. They hadn't been paid in 6 months, and you show up with a little bit of money. It was a mess. And, people getting flex cuffed and that. And, it's like a riot, but they're not bad guys.
Right.
So it's not like
they just want their money, Yeah, it had to be nerve-wracking. And like, I'm sure the ROE was such that you cannot do anything unless you're actively engaged, so you're like always on edge, I'm sure.
And then only thing you could do was, it was, real. You couldn't go to the level of shooting someone unless they were going to shoot you.
Sure.
It was, you know what I mean? It was
right.
And remember before we left at Schofield, we did all the riot training and all that stuff, and because Somalia had already happened by that point, so that a lot of that what they call it, light intensity combat at the time, they were calling it the LIC phase, the MIC phase, and all.
Okay.
But there was a lot of that training that was going on in humanitarian and how to protect convoys and all that stuff, and we all we had to get sprayed in the face with mace, and then subdued your attacker and
sure.
put them in flex cuffs and all that stuff. And so we did get some level of training before we went to do it, but it was like, this is an MP job. This is not Brett the JTAC job at all.
But what else were you gonna do? It was like there's no.
But it was a cool experience. Don't get me wrong. I was all in for it, but like, holy cow, this is some crazy shit. But other than that, we had the weapons turn in. Subdued a few guys who were trying to fight over a weapon. I didn't know they were fighting over a weapon. I thought they were trying to shoot each other. So, but it turns out they were just trying to turn the weapon in. But other than that, it was pretty uneventful. But that place, holy cow, that was the first time I saw poverty like that ever. I mean, mud huts and people bathing and washing and cooking, and it's just sewage water running down the gutter, that kind of thing. It was eye opening for sure.
Yeah.
But we were there for 2, 3, 4 months, something like that. Came back to Hawaii, and then I got at that point got orders to well. The first thing that happened in Hawaii, let me back up a little bit. The first thing that happened in Hawaii is the day I got there, I met my wife.
Oh, okay.
So I met her the day I got there. We got married a year later, lived on the North Shore. So nice. Hawaii was a great assignment. I mean, it was off-duty time was awesome. Work on duty was good. It was a good time. Lived on the beach. We lived right at Pipeline. And you just walk out to the beach and there's famous people surfing, and it was I don't know, just to have that opportunity, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
After that, it was volunteered or I think Trevor Sock had been talking about going down to the schoolhouse, and I kind of got interested in that, so I looked into that, and he ended up going to JCU, and I ended up going to the schoolhouse. So that's how that worked out, and that was an awesome assignment. Also, I was not an AATC instructor. That assignment, I was actually an ACC instructor, farmed out of AGOS, the old AGOS school that was down there, JFCC or JFCC AGOS.
Yep.
So they also had the TALO, or I guess it'd be the AMLO now or whatever, but the TALO program, and they had to have part of their course was putting jumpers out. Nice. So we had 8 or 12 airborne slots there. So got to do that, and we jumped. I mean, it was a lot of Hollywood jumps, but we did a lot of jumps. It was fun. I think we did a 9,999 jump out of a helicopter.
Oh man!
Like with a round.
Yeah.
With a Dash 1 Bravo, I think, at the time. But that was kind of awesome.
How close were you to the PI?
Oh shit, we were. I don't know if you know where Pinot Drop Zone is.
Yeah.
I feel like we were in what's that next town over? I don't know.
I was gonna say
we were way. Well, Bruce Avance was an awesome spotter because he was Halo and Jump Master or whatever.
Right,
he was Avance could spot for sure, and Bobby Urkel was really good at it too.
Yeah.
So we all hit the drop zone, but it was weird because I want to say the wind was out of the east, which is very rare. Kind of normally out of the west, but the prevailing winds that day were out of the east, and we were way. I mean, we were way over. And like I couldn't even see the drop zone really.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see like it's looking at it like this.
Generally that way.
So that was cool. But yeah, we did a lot of jumping down there, and that's back when they had the Jump Fest.
Oh yeah.
Rag. Did you ever get to go to any of those? Or?
A couple of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always, every time anybody mentions Jump Fest, I always tell them the story about, I put Kenny Lindsay in the trees one time because I was a brand new jump master, and we were jumping out of Huey's, and I pointed him out, and it was him, Jazz. I can't remember who the other guy was. I hate that I can't remember because a good buddy of mine. But anyway, they all looked at me like, no, this is not where you need. I'm like, I said, go. And we all went out, and we were way far away from the PI, and Kenny went in the trees, and it was bad. But anyway, yes, I've been in there a couple times. Anyway, go ahead.
Was that 96? Was that 96?
It had to have been 90, after 97. I didn't get to Benning until 97. So maybe like 98, 99, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, we had the Jump Fest. Like I said, we did a lot of practicing. Down at it was the best kept secret. It was straight up just a jump club. I mean, and Bobby Urkel would jump static line like he was free falling.
Sure.
I don't mean with that same vigor. It was like,
yeah.
Hey, we're chasing jumps. I'm like, yeah, but it's static line jumps, and we're slamming into the ground.
Right.
That dude would try his hardest because the updraft, the thermals were such at Pinot that it was usually a pillow landing almost every time. Yeah. That dude would try to do a stand up landing every time with no matter if he was in a T10, a Dash 1 Bravo, Dash 1 Charlie, whatever. He was trying to stand up, and it's yeah.
I always remember you guys did
back-
the schoolhouse. The instructors always did really well at those things. I mean, you guys were always
Yeah.
landed together, really
like I
tight groups. I mean, you guys did real well.
We practiced and trained, and we were in with the SEER guys, instructor over at Eglin,
Oh, okay.
for he was the SEER guy for the F-15 squadron that was there. I can't think of the squadron right now, but they had their own Huey.
Makes it
And,
nice. It makes it
we-
easy.
We would jump. We would jump out of that thing all the time, and would just elevator up and down and just jump all the time.
Yeah.
And then there was always something to jump out of.
Right. Right.
And, sometimes we get caught up jumping with like the 712th or whatever, not the gunships, but the MCs.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is that the weather was bad. You didn't get out, and you ended up flying with them up in the mountains in the back of that thing, doing low altitude through the mountains up at Dahlonega and whatever. And that part of it was not fun.
Right.
Well, anyway, we the first jump fest we went to, that I went to anyway, I was on the B team that year. I think the A team was we sent 2 teams, Urkel and Avance and Buddy Wilborn, somebody else. And then it was me, Dan Hannikin, and Ed Baswell, and Rob Nix was supposed to be our jump master. We were picking up him out of Bragg. Whatever reason, Rob did not show up. I don't know if he partied too hard the night before or whatever, but he didn't show up from jump master brief. So we were short of jump master. So Tim Staney jumped in and jump master for us, which was awesome.
Nah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
lucky. Yeah.
I mean, anything I can do with Tim Staney,
Oh.
so to speak, is I want to be there for it.
For sure.
That dude's awesome.
Yeah.
So he was our jump master, and I just remember a couple different things. On one of the jumps, he's giving the 5 right to the crew. He keeps giving 5 right, and then we come around, like no go around. He's getting 5 right, and finally he just goes, "Let's go." Like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means, but apparently we're not getting the 5 right.
Yeah.
Away we went. And then one of those jumps was out of a is it the Casa 212, the one that like the ramp comes up and it's like you're looking high level at the ramp. It's got a little bubble window. I want to say it was either that, maybe it was a Sherpa. I don't know. But Dan, you know how you're always in those, like you said, everybody's trying to stay together, so we're trying to get tight
Sure.
when we go out. I mean, it's almost like we're doing a halo exit, but we're static line.
Like right on. Yeah.
So you
right
can't
on
be
the pack tray.
So you can't be too tight. And Dan, for whatever reason, would always forget that he's jumping static line and would dive out. So we get to the end of the ramp and he kind of stutters and dives. And I closed the distance because he hesitated a little bit on the ramp trying to figure out what he was going to do. And this pack tray comes down and hits me in the face, flips me upside down, and now my foot's caught up in the riser and I'm head down. Dan's going over like, he's all twisted up because he dove out.
Right.
And I'm just cussing him like for everything I can because I'm trying to get my foot out of it. And I finally, at treetop level, foot swings out and I come down, my ass hits the top of the tree and make it out. I make it to the drop zone like a sack of shit. And but I was MFing Dan all the way on that whole run to the Frisbee. But it was always a good time. Dan, that guy, holy cow, he was that guy was interesting. He was the Eagle Flight NCOIC, or Bob Yerkel was to start with, and then Dan had worked up in the front office and then moved down to be the Eagle Flight instructor or Eagle Flight instructor supervisor. And I don't know, he was interesting dude. He kind of let us build the course the way we wanted it, the way we needed it to be, and I think we probably maybe been doing stuff that maybe eventually they got to and actually got it into the syllabus, but at the time it was probably like, just you think that needs to be done, go do it. And which was good.
He's a smart dude. He's a really smart guy.
Yeah, I think he became a teacher, and I don't know,
Yeah, you should. I interviewed him a little bit ago. You should check out his episode.
Yeah, well, I think I saw the, you know how you did had the long and the short
Yep,
sometimes
yep.
or whatever. I think I saw the short.
Oh,
Short
okay.
of that one. I didn't get through all the long yet. But yeah, he was a good dude. But that jump fest was I want to say that's the one where I get them mixed together because I did two in a row right there. One of my brother was there, and they jumped in their blues. But I think it was the year before that he had just got in there, and they
Okay.
didn't jump. That's what it was. Jeremy, Dave Bickle, Mariano, the whole crew. Those guys came through tech school at the same time.
Yeah.
I was there, down there, and they got to brag, or went to jump school, got to brag, and they actually got their cherry jump during Jump Fest. It was a separate event, but they got their cherry jump, and we're having a party at the picnic grounds or whatever, and everybody's there, and they're giving blood wings and doing whatnot to different people doing different things, and I just saw what was going to happen with that thing, so I get on the phone with Jeremy, like, hey, whatever you guys do not show up at this party.
Right.
I'm telling you, you can do what you want, but I'm telling you, do not show up at this party because not everybody knows, but everybody from your unit knows that you guys got your cherry blast today. And luckily, Colonel Parent stepped in and said that the unit would handle that like on Monday, or
Yeah.
they
He didn't want
they would
every
get their
jumper
due,
in the
but,
career field to be pounding these guys' wings in.
unfortunately for this Army guy who became either got his senior wings or his jump master wings, he apparently wanted to get his blood wings that day.
Okay.
But he got, holy cow, I think I told you this before, but Cleaver hit him so hard in the chest that his teeth flew out.
Cleaver's teeth.
His bridge flew out and hit the guy in the face. It was, and then yeah.
That's my favorite story, man. Oh gosh. Oh.
And then one of the years, Congo got his senior or master blaster wings there too. Can't think of his name right now. I think you've got a story on him.
Lee Blackwell.
Lee, gosh, why couldn't I think of that? If you see this, Lee, I apologize. But yeah, Lee got his senior wings at one of those, and it was brutal.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, he was like passing out.
Man.
But that was yeah, I told Jeremy, I'm like, yeah, you guys, you're gonna take your beating anyway. So, but I just wouldn't get it from 4 times the amount.
Well, it's one thing to get a senior rating or a master wing, but to get your basic
yes.
wings, I mean that I could have done it. Senior
Yeah,
M and
then everybody.
Schmetterlap, we could have done. Anybody could have
Yeah.
pounded them in.
Yeah.
Hundreds of guys.
Yeah.
That'd have been nuts.
That was training for that thing. That we spent a lot of time at the schoolhouse. So I mean, not a lot of time, but it's like we did a lot of, like I said, we did a lot of Hollywood jumping. So
Sure.
it was custom made for preparing for that thing. And that assignment at the schoolhouse was pretty good. Like I said, my brother went through. I got to do that. That was
cool.
pretty interesting. And be yelling at him 1 minute and then call him aside and be like, "Hey man, did you call mom?
Right.
She needs to know what's going on, or she wants to know if you're coming home for Christmas. Whatever." It was just kind of surreal. But those guys had a pretty good class. That was actually my first class after basic instructor course was his class, and then running the field trip, and I thought I knew how to navigate before that,
Yeah.
but after teaching that course for 2 stints down there, actually, I don't know, your navigation skills just went through the roof,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, maybe it's just because I know this range so well, so I feel like I can navigate, but it just carried over to
Sure.
And that was the thing that I loved about that assignment was for the majority, I would say 80 to 90% of the people got it at some point, the students, and you could actually see the light bulb come on,
Yeah.
on students at different times, which was really cool. I mean, it was a fun assignment, and I probably, it was a lot of, I went from, partying hard like an airman at Hood, and then still partying hard, but not so much because I'm married and that kind of thing at Hawaii.
Yeah.
So you get down there and it's just different, I mean, everyone's a staff sergeant or above, and you're spread out and living. Everybody's got a family. There's hardly any single. It was just pull back on the throttles as far as that goes, which was probably good.
And you probably felt some sort of responsibility to, have your act together, because you're teaching the new guys. So
Yeah.
like, it's not like you're at a unit where you can just do whatever and take care of yourself. I mean, these are the new TACPs that are becoming through the, going out to the units. And if they suck, then it's like, well, who are the instructors, when they went through?
Well, I took it personal. I mean, I took it very personal, as far as the training goes. And you would have your instructor persona that you would have to flip on from time to time and be, I don't want to say yelling, but, just the, the smoke sessions, that kind of, the shark PT, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I could always flip that switch on and off, and it was very rare that it was if I was really upset, or it was very rare that it was not authentic. And I think you could see that. But I think some of the instructors didn't have a switch at all. They were just full bore the whole time.
Yeah.
And, different styles. And it worked for some people, and then there were some people that just couldn't. I don't want to say be mean, because it wasn't being mean, but there was some guys that just.
I know what you mean.
Just couldn't.
Yeah, they
just couldn't drive it home.
Yeah.
They
always kind of easy going, maybe a little too easy going sometimes.
Easy going, too easy going. But I took the lessons from that, and then when I went back down to the schoolhouse the second time, and was in a more leadership role there, got to implement some of those things, throughout, everybody,
Nice.
So, and it was different moments when that light bulb would turn on, but you could see it sometimes, like, oh, I get it. These lines look like this, and that means I'm here. And then there were some guys that were just like, the whole time it was like, okay, the compasses go that way. I'm just going to walk that way. For how many steps I got to walk, and
Right.
hopefully I'm there. but everybody, I don't know. It was a good assignment, and I only did it for, I think that first stint was there for 2.5 years, and then the ACC instructor slots were only 3-year assignments. So I started figuring out what the next thing was, and Ranger Battalion had an opening up at Lewis, and decided I'd go up there. Avance and had been, Avance and Kibbe had been at the Rangers. They were Benning, and they kind of talked me into it, like, yeah, you need to go try this and do this.
Yeah.
By that point, that's what I wanted to do anyway. So, but there were no openings there, and Carrie, my wife, was still active duty at the time.
Oh, okay.
So we took Lewis, and she actually ended up getting out before that. So we went to Lewis.
So you were trying to get down to Benning, but then there was nothing down there, so you took the Lewis.
Yeah. The Lewis assignment was open. And,
Okay.
And that was at the time when they were their admin. They were adcon to the first group, and Chief Matthews, Two Dog Matthews, was the chief at the time. And
Oh, that's right.
he, he's just, that dude was a gruff old dude. I mean, I had met him before, kind of, but not really. And
Yeah.
I called him on the phone to see what I needed to do to put a package in, and he talked like Billy Bob Thornton from Sling Blade the whole time, and he just, am I in the bazaar? Who am I talking to here?
Right.
This
guy's in charge.
And he's like, just put together a package and send it to me. Okay. So I did, and I did not go to a formal selection. It was paper select. I mean, they would send out the standards and what you had to do beforehand, and basically just a PT test.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all it was. I think eventually they changed it, and it's way changed now. But we went through some different iterations of soft tack piece selection and that kind of stuff too.
Right.
If you wanted to be in it was the 22nd ASOF at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But,
and you guys were the 8th ASOF, right? Didn't you? Was that?
We were the 8th ASOF. So we were a separate flight, a numbered flight. AdCon, we reported to first group, and TACON, we were through Benning. So I think for the most part, most of the time I was there, I want to say Bruce, Chief Voigt, was in charge at Benning at the time.
Yeah, he was in charge when I got there.
What years did you get there?
I got there in 97.
97. Well, and I got there in, I guess, December 90 or January 98, I guess.
Okay.
Were you at the regular unit to start with, or did you go straight to the Rangers?
No, I was in Germany, and I did the same thing you did. I got a package together. My commander and some guys there put me through the paces, and did the PT test and the swim and the ruck march and all that stuff. And then I went to Benning from Germany. So a lot of good guys came over from the 15th, or it was all the 17th at the time, but they a lot of good guys came from the conventional side. But yeah, I came in kind of like you did.
And finally, getting there, that was like, this is what the career field's all about to me. I thought that was the best assignment.
Same.
We were 5 guys in an office on the second floor, Italian, and had the skiff on one side so no one could come down that hall, and then the snipers were down at the other end of the hall. So we were kind of just sandwiched in there. We had one office and one storage room,
Yeah.
bathroom. We just kind of we were hidden away from the Air Force side, and they didn't, the battalion didn't mess with us too much, and what we needed to get involved with, we knew, and we did it. And it was, as far as doing cool shit, it was a good assignment.
Yeah.
And those were, I want to say, McChrystal was still at Richmond at the time.
Oh, was he the RCO at the time? I know he came
Yeah.
from 2nd Battalion.
Yeah, so I think McChrystal was the RCO, and Bednarik was our battalion.
Okay.
Was our battalion commander. But I remember we did a bilat out at we were staging out of Edwards, and the winds were horrible the whole time. So they kept pushing it back, and you had like a 3-day window to do the practice mission, and then the rehearsal, and then the long. And it got canceled all the way down to where they had time to do one. The winds were still up, so they decided that they would air land and ruck it. The Charlie Company got selected, so we were going to be the ones going to do the initial clear the airfield or whatever. And they didn't want to do it because it was a 27 mile infield. I remember that's why I'm wondering if he was the RCO, or if he was at SOCOM or whatever at the time. But he was there. And they were talking about how many people would fall out, and how they were going to collect casualties. People fell out on the road march, or the foot infield, because it was 27 miles, and the Crystal told them, "I'll guarantee you," and they had a bet, "I'll guarantee you that zero falls out." And they said, "Okay, well." So just based on the bet, they decided that they would do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, was he doing?
Oh, God,
were you guys doing the 30-mile road marches up at 2nd Battalion? I think the whole regiment was doing it when he was the RCO. Yeah, you did like a quarterly, 30s. You did like a 20-miler, and then you did a 30-mile. Yeah, it was brutal.
30, 20s, and 10s, but the 30s.
That was like assault packs.
Yeah, assault packs, and you didn't really have a whole lot.
Yeah.
The 20s were. The 20s always seemed worse to me, because
20s
we had more
were
gear,
the worst.
and we would do shooting lanes and all that shit as part of it. But this was like, I had everything that I was going to jump.
I was going to say, if you did a 27-mile infill with all your gear, I mean, that had to be brutal. Was it like, was it nonstop, or did you guys how did
it was so we landed we landed at the Aux Field, and I can't think of it now, but outside of Indian Springs. We were staging out of Edward, and taking down Creech, or Indian Springs, or whatever. So there's a halfway point out there that's more than halfway, I guess, but it's just a little airstrip, a little dirt strip. So we landed there. I want to say we got there at midnight, and we walked all the way until 7 o'clock. And then at 7 o'clock we got in the hide site, and it was 7 o'clock. We were it was 5 clicks away from the airfield, but the hit was supposed to happen, shortly thereafter, or we were supposed to infill shortly thereafter. But me, Hoyt Davis, and three snipers. I guess it was maybe 5, because it was 2 snipers, me and Hoyt, and then the javelin team. They had a javelin and a clue, and
God, I mean,
so
that's what we're talking about. Like, they had to lug that thing all that whole way. I mean, God.
Yeah. So we had to go that last 7 clicks. It was 7 clicks for us, so we had to get up on the hill above the thing, so we use the clue to find a ZSU or a mortar pit. We had whatever had to be taken out before they could do the air land. And we had F-15Es, Strike Eagles, that were going to come in and pre-assault fires or whatever. Nice. And I was going to control those. And we had lasers. We had the soft lamb, the battery pack.
Jeez.
Had all that shit. And we go across to try to get to this, and it was wide open, and we didn't want to be seen, so we had to wait for it to get somewhat dark, and then we just ran our asses off to get to this hill. We get up there, and we're searching for it, and we get the laser set up, and I got everything. I didn't bring the tripod, but it was between me and Hoyt. We had everything. We had too much shit. And I get on the radio, and the F-15s check in, and that's when I realized that I'm talking to Bruce Voigt and not a pilot.
He was simulating.
And there was no F-15. The Strike Eagles fell out because they were supposed to really be there.
Uh-huh.
and they fell out, and he
You could tell. I'm sure you could tell right away his voice.
I thought like, gosh. So he was, yeah, and I'm like, well, didn't really need this, but we were done after that, and it was windy as shit. But I remember we were done after that, but we staked the poncho down, just got up underneath the poncho and just stayed there till exfil. But
You guys all had to be smoked. I can't, man.
oh,
Gosh.
it was miserable, but it was I mean, it was fun.
Well, those are the things that you do, and then like the next day or a week later, you're like, man, remember that thing we did? I was, then you're like, feel good about it. On the day, you probably were not thinking it like that.
Well, I can tell you, like at 4 a.m, been walking for 4 hours, and I'm thinking we are nowhere near close.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't. I mean, like I said, we were all weighted down, so it wasn't like we were moving fast,
Right.
which sometimes makes it worse.
Yeah. Let's just keep going.
And it was open desert. I mean, it was across the open desert. It wasn't like we were going down roads or anything.
Yeah. But that's the tricky part because it's still a mission, so you can't just like get your road march on and just start, swinging your rifle or whatever. You got to be semi-tactical and have your head up and looking around. And
Yeah. Well, it was good when it was over. It's good. It's a good story to talk about. But,
oh,
but we did that, and I think that assignment, I thought that I would be on that track and that path, throughout. Once I got there, I figured that would be it for me. And like I said, I loved it there. The leadership was good. The battalion leadership was good. We fit in. They let us fit in. It wasn't like besides the normal jokes back and forth between services. It was. I felt like we were respected and well part of the battalion.
yeah.
As a whole. And it was me, Scott Myers, Bob Hicks was there for a while, Gary Knowles, Mike Griffith, Nishimoto, and then a handful of officers.
Yeah.
Oh, we had Captain Langus. That dude. His call sign. Well, I don't know what his call sign was, but we gave him the call sign of Connie. And
I'm sure it was something like that on their side too. It had to be.
It had to be. And oh gosh, the Army, every manifest, they would call all of us out by rank, name, except for him. They would call him Connie. And he got so pissed off at us. Like, so we either called him Connie or Crapton. We wouldn't call him Crapton, but he would hear us talk about him and refer to him as Crapton.
Oh.
He was actually a pretty good guy. I mean, it was he was an AC-130 pilot, and
Oh, okay.
he was a good. He took it in stride. He took it in stride better than some would.
Yeah.
And then we had Slammer Provost, and the staff loved him because he had a fishing boat, and he was a triathlete, marathon runner.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of guy. And they would palletize his triathlon bike. They would palletize that for him on all the trips that we went. And we went to a JRTC one time, and he was in his cool down phase for Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wasn't supposed to be doing anything. So he talked them into him not going with the battalion, going with the Takas, and I ended up going. We were the Sim Center battalion.
Oh, okay.
So everybody's inside hanging out, but the TAC 1 was actually going to be in the field.
Oh, okay.
TAC 1 was going to be in the field. You had then you're passing, kind of in the field when you're passing shit back to the Sim Center.
Yeah, yeah.
And TAC 2 was going to be at the Sim Center also, and I was TAC 2. I was the NCOIC or whatever. So he didn't go, so I ended up going in the field, and that's when in Colonel Okita, they're telling him, well, it's like when we do our movements here and there, like, sir, you're in this container, this area, you're really not moving or maneuvering. You got a one click by one click maneuver area. That's where you're going to be.
Yeah.
And everything is simulated. But you guys are just in the field so that it has to come across the radios, and just that.
Sure.
What that level of separation brings to it. And he said, well, if we're in a one click by one click box and we have to move 10 kilometers, we'll just walk around this box 4 times. I guess that math wasn't good, but whatever. Yeah. The math on 2.5 times. But yeah, and that's what we did. We walked around that thing. Remember the RTO officer, the was an officer. He was an RTO, or the comm officer, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He had all kinds of shit on, and he is dark, just dark as dark can be, and he falls down a hill or into a like a pond. It wasn't really a pond, it was just like a out at JRTC in Louisiana. It's just the pockets of water all over the place or whatever. And he fell in one of those with all of his gear on, and damn near drowned. I mean, he had, no one really, you just really couldn't see it happen because it was so dark. And they finally got him out, and that's when the commander finally went, okay, so maybe we'll check fire on that a little bit.
Yeah.
But that dude was intense. Colonel Akita. I mean, it was everything he did was about taking it to the enemy, and that's kind of what he was about. But we were out at Yakima, and we had the fire support guys with us, and we're doing out on the OP doing casts, and it snowed. I mean, it snowed the night before, and we're going out there. So they were going to go out there first, and we were going to meet them. So we take the Humvee out, and we stay on the road, and it's like a lot of snow, but the Humvee's still good. And we're going. I don't know if you've been to Yakima before out to those OPs, but
not to the OPs. No,
it's like there's like 3 across or something, across the third hill. So you're kind of going up and down, but we're on the ridge line, and there's a road, and there's a lot of snow, but it's doable.
Right.
So we get there, and I'm like, damn, where are the Rangers at? They're not here. And we kind of look around and see that they're down on the side of the hill, and they were in a 5-ton or an LMTV, and they're down on the side of the hill in the snow drifts with this thing buried.
Oh my gosh.
So they dig it out. We go down there and dig it out, and use the winch and all that. Hook their cable to our cable, so we'd have enough. That's how far down there they were. And
Yeah.
get them pulled out and all that. And the FSO forgot. He forgot that Colonel Akita was going to meet him at the end of the road at a certain time, and he was going to come out and watch the. He wasn't going to come out in the morning because we were doing a bunch of other stuff before the cast checked on, but he was going to come out and catch the second half of the cast or something like that.
Okay.
FSO forgets. And it's probably 3 miles. It's probably 3 miles from this intersection. And like I said, it's snow up, at least along that road up to your thighs.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of snow. I'm sitting in the Humvee, and everybody's just trying to stay warm in between vols. And I think it's me and Mike Griffith, and we're heating up some MREs or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
And Mike's eyes get really big, and he points over, and he's like, and I turn around, and Colonel Akita's in the window, and he's just like, if his face could have truly been red, or I don't know. I mean, it looked like a Coke can. He was fucking livid. And I didn't know if I should unzip the window and talk to him or hop out, So
Right.
I'm like, I can't talk to him through the window. I got to stand up to talk to this man.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to open the door, and he's in front of it. So I'm hitting him with the door. And he's like, Sergeant Ramos, what the fuck is going on out here? Why are my Rangers up here, sitting up against and I'm like just taking it. I'm hoping the FSO is going to come down at some point.
Yeah, like
which he eventually does. And he got his ass. He got his ass handed to him. But he couldn't comprehend why we had our helmets off and we're eating MREs in the middle of training, sitting around. He had no idea what had gone on or what point we were at. But I know that I doubt it probably would have happened if he hadn't forgotten him and left him down there, or if he had told me that
he had that 3
or if he
miles
had told me,
get more upset. Just
and the thing is, the FSO never told me that he was coming, so I didn't know. I didn't know either.
So
I had no idea.
You thought he showed up out of the blue for nothing, like no reason.
Yeah. I'm like, holy shit, Colonel Akita's here. And and then there was another time we were coming back from. I think we jumped into not Fort Smith, Smithfield, somewhere in South Carolina. There's a auxiliary base out there. I can't think of what it's called. It's near Charleston, because we ended up going back through Charleston. But we crossed country, in-flight rig, jumped in. Then on the way back, we usually would jump back in on the way back, but the weather was always shitty, so it usually didn't happen. But on this time, it did happen.
Yeah.
And we're just we're just admin marching back to battalion. Then we get back there, and Colonel Akita lays into us like because dudes didn't have their NVGs on,
Oh,
walking
yeah.
down, streets with street lights. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's like, what do you expect? Yeah.
yeah, but he was like, we are training to kill people, and NVGs are made for killing people at night, and it's nighttime. Turned us around and made us go back out, and ended up not doing the whole thing, and we kind of pulled out. We Air Forced that one,
Yeah.
but those guys ended up doing about half of that road march over with their NVGs on.
Well, I mean, that's like to his. I mean, that's kind of what the Rangers
he's
did.
right.
They always. That's one thing I loved about him too. Is like it was always realistic. You always did exactly what you would do in a normal situation. Now on that, they probably weren't thinking they were still tactical. They they're just trying to get back to the hooch.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just never know how commander's going to react.
And then and the Chaplain McBride, that guy was awesome. He was the battalion chaplain, and he chewed me out. Never been cussed out by a chaplain, but he did it. Very mildly cussing, but he was really pissed off.
Yeah.
But the combat controller, a young kid, was jumping the bike bundle, and Chaplain McBride was the jump master of the safety, or assistant jump master. He was on one of the doors.
Yeah.
So we do equipment check and realize that this guy's reserve has got a nylon hanging out of it or something. So they pull him off the line, but he was the only combat controller on there, and because they jump exposed and all that different stuff, they couldn't be JMPI'd by anybody else. So they pulled him off the line, and he I just assumed he went to the back, or I didn't really know why they pulled him off at the time, but Chaplain McBride just assumed we pulled you off and he was just going to airland whenever the airland.
Right.
They still put his bike bundle out, and we went. But before we went, I don't know, it didn't even seem like he had enough time to do it. And maybe it wasn't when we stood up that they figured this out. But whatever it was, he went to the back of the airplane and got another reserve out of the spare kit bag, rigged up, and as everybody was going out, he jumped on the line, had enough time to hook up and go out the door, the last guy. I got his bike bundle and took that because I figured he wasn't there and somebody had to get it.
Yeah.
So, and took that back to the collection point, and to me it was told them where it was, and I went on and did did my mission said.
Yeah.
And we get back that night, and it was getting ready to go to the AAR or whatever, and Chaplain McBride sees me and pulls me aside, and he's like pissed off, and I didn't even know that kid had jumped, and he's like, hey, this, that, and the other, and Air Force doing what they want to do, and I don't have control over my people. I'm like, Chaplain, he's not part of my unit. I don't even know that kid's name, but I will look into it, and I will make sure it doesn't happen again, and I'll find out. And he's like, well, you got to realize that you guys are Air Force, and you live with us, and you're part of our unit, and any Air Force guy that's on these missions, they belong to you, and you're responsible for them.
See,
in my eyes,
I don't know if I agree with that though. I mean, you know the deal with those guys.
And I don't agree with that, but I understood that that's how they saw it, so I didn't try to change that mindset
for
so
sure.
much. Although I did,
Yeah, you couldn't have done anything right then and there. Yeah.
But I definitely went to the other side and said, "Hey, you guys are a reflection on us and the Air Force as a whole.
Yeah.
So, I have no say so whether you are on this mission or not on this mission. I'm sure I could have some influence with the commander, but you guys are on the mission because you're supposed to be part of the mission. But you guys are making us look bad.
Yeah.
So, and they fixed it. I think it was Staha. Colonel Staha was over there at the time.
Oh, good.
So he took care of it. He was at the 22nd at the time.
I mean, the guy was just trying to, he was just trying to be a hard charger and trying to get on the mission. I mean, it was like he had, his bike was going out. He had a job to do. He's like, well, I mean, this one doesn't work. I might as well get another one. It was totally.
He made it happen, and I mean, I'm surprised he even put a different parachute or a different reserve on. To be honest,
Right.
I mean, I probably, I just assumed he would probably just tuck that piece up in and
Yeah.
Exactly. Go. But I don't know. But yeah, that like you said, that assignment was like that, and that dude or those dudes always did everything by the book. Our SOP says you do it this way. That's what we're doing. And
Yeah.
there was no variance from it at the time. Anyway, that was a good assignment, and like I said, I thought that would be my path from there on, and ended up getting orders to Korea, and that changed. Kind of threw a wrench in there.
Yeah.
But, went to Korea in 2001. Korea was fun, but it was. I always tell people that if I had gone as a senior airman or an A1C, I probably would have died.
Yeah.
Going as a tech sergeant, going as a tech sergeant, you're trying to make sure other people didn't die.
All right.
But we had a good crew. Scott Myers was there. I mean, he ended up following me there also, and
Oh, cool.
Brock Davis, Gary Jones, Russ Carpenter. Had a pretty good commander. He was a drunk, but he was a pretty good commander. and I say that he liked to drink. I don't know if I won't say he was a drunk.
I mean, in
He liked
Korea,
If-
that's like,
It was 9 in the morning in his office. I guess I was having a drink. I had a drink with him, so I guess. But kind of felt, maybe there was a little peer pressure there. But yeah, he was a good dude, he was a fun dude. I don't know if he was the best commander. He may have been different stateside, but he looked out for us, which was good. And the funny thing is he outranked the ASOC commander.
oh, really?
How that worked, I don't know. And we kind of fell under them at Casey. The way whatever the chain of command works.
Yeah.
But ultimately they couldn't say anything to him because they could, but he outranked them. So
Yeah.
we kind of had hands off. But yeah, we Korea were there up until September 11th, and then that kind of changed everything.
Yeah.
It was normal Korea assignment up to that point, and then obviously everything changed.
Right.
They locked us down on the base and all that stuff. We were locked on the base from September till like the beginning of November, I guess. I mean, it was a long time
Yeah.
before they start going back downtown, and and then the curfews were really crazy. Before that, you had the curfew was like 1 or 2 o'clock, and unless you had a warrior pass, you had a warrior pass, and you could stay out all night or whatever. And I think there were 53 of us in the unit, and we had 48 warrior passes. So
Nice.
the normal army, I think you were supposed to have 10% of your personnel was how many warrior passes you had, and they were basically the handout for doing good shit or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Get a weekend pass or whatever. But so we submitted the names, but we submitted for everybody. Not just our base, it's just every TACP that was
Sure.
on the peninsula, or whatever. But we had a bunch of them, so everybody, we pretty much had the Ville to ourselves every night
Nice.
if we wanted it. But it was, it was, I liked it because you're going out controlling air every day, and that's really all you had to do. We did the Rock talked me into doing the Manchu Mile with him, and that was kind of fun. I don't know if you're familiar or
I'm not really.
the Manchu Mile. I mean, it is a recreation of the 26, 28 mile infill that the Manchu Battalion did
Oh,
in
okay.
Korea. And they do it every so often. You get a belt buckle and
Oh, okay. Oh, I guess I do know.
whatever,
They
yeah.
mentioned the belt buckle. Yeah, I do remember that.
And Rock's like, hey, I'm doing the Manchu Mile. I think you need to come with us. Or me and Hoffman are doing it. Because it was his battalion that was doing it. It's like, he should come with us. Like, man, I really don't need a belt buckle. I got plenty of belt buckles. But like, okay, yeah, he talked me into it. So, and it was, oh gosh, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And it's up and down all the hills. And it was what I was saying earlier, because we were walking too slow.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, this is going to take forever. And you'd walk, and then you'd walk about 30 minutes and then stop and walk. And then finally we're going up around Scorpion's Tail and then up around, I can't remember the name of that other hill. We're going up over the hill, and Hoffman, he and I are like, man, we can't take this anymore. So we just run up to the front and try to take the guide on and we're going to take over. So we run up there and go to grab it, and the commander, sergeant majors up front, they're like, Air Force, start yelling at us. Yeah, so that didn't work out. But we did that. That was, stuff like that was kind of fun. Other than that, Korea was typical normal Korea assignment until September 11th happened. But right before that, in July, my actual plans, my assignment out of there was 7th group. I was going to go to Bragg. They were still at Bragg, and do that side of the soft tac world. Try to do the 7th group stuff. And in July, Avance was back down at the schoolhouse, and he called me up and talked me into come back to the schoolhouse, which I was reluctant to do, but he sold it pretty well. I'm like, yeah, you can be the Eagle Flight instructor supervisor and then be the superintendent, and we can build the schoolhouse, do what we want to do. And, I'm not even thinking, the war is it's not even a thing in anybody's mind at this point.
Right.
So, so I changed my assignment, put in a package or whatever to go back down there. Got pushed through. I think Chief Burrow was at ACC at the time and got all that pushed through. And then September 11th happened, and I immediately called him back and said, Chief, I want to go back to Lewis. And he said, is there any way just get me back to Lewis, because I could see where this thing was going.
Yeah.
It's like, don't jump the gun. And, this is probably a quick one and done thing. Just stick to your assignment. Go. And as much as I asked, he wouldn't do it. So, So I went to the schoolhouse and kind of missed out on the first part of the war, which was a tough pill to swallow for a while. But, and at first, you get down to the schoolhouse and everybody's there, and it's, but eventually we started, guys started coming in as instructors that, had been downrange.
Yeah.
And which was good because we needed that experience and that into the career field. But then you start realizing what you were missing and what was going on. So I kind of made it my mantra, or, if I'm going to be here and I got to be here, I'm going to try to make it worthwhile and make sure these guys are ready, because I don't see this thing ending anytime soon, which, hey, crystal ball, I was right. So that's when we started really working on the standards and trying to, circumvent the whole UNTW cycle of how, up until that point, I didn't really know how stuff worked or why we taught what we taught at the schoolhouse or how that came about. And you really figure that out. And, everybody in the career field shows up, and the chiefs make the decision on what goes into the 623 or whatever it's called,
the training record.
Can't think of it now. Training record, all the different skill level stuff and what's trained at the tech school and to what level and how that's done. And, and then ACC or AETC gets involved, and they're like, well, you have land navigation, but it's a 1B level or whatever it is, meaning they couldn't understand why we let them go on their own and why we weren't there walking with every student to do their, do 100 meters worth of navigation. And one of the guys was one of those ATC guys was a security forces guy. He's like, we teach navigation of security forces, and, everybody passes, and you walk 100 meters, make sure a guy can do it through the woods, and you sign him off. That's the 1B level. And I'm like, well, these guys are doing something different.
Yeah.
We're not teaching them how to navigate. We're teaching them to know where they're at, so that, because it comes into play on so many other things. Navigation is just the means by which we're doing that. So we try to get that stuff changed so that what we were actually doing was codified in the actual documents.
Oh, okay.
But it was an uphill battle, and it was like pounding your head against the table. And finally we moved away from Keesler and got over to Lackland, not the schoolhouse, but who we were grouped under.
Yeah.
And that helped a little bit, because then we were in the same squadron as the combat controllers and the pararescue guys, so we didn't have to explain why we were doing what we were doing, but getting money, getting support, and all that was still an issue.
Yeah.
So they eventually fixed all that after I left. I mean, it took years, but we set that stuff in motion. This was down there for 4 years after that, and went from Eagle Flight instructor supervisor, and then became a superintendent of the school. Met Nick Sully, which was, I don't know if you know Nick or.
I know. Yeah, he was at Benning when I was there.
Well, he would. Yeah, that's right. He would. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Awesome guy.
He's a great guy, and I love working for that dude, and that dude, backed us up. Whatever we wanted, that dude. I mean, I remember the Oak Horse. We built the Oak Horse, and we needed a place to park in front of the Oak Horse, but there were these bushes in front of it, like along the side of the road where we wanted to park. And I told him, like, the base is telling us we can't move those trees because they're in a wet zone, or, they won't come and move them for us because they're in a wet zone. So later that night, that dude goes over in his truck himself and puts ropes on each one of those trees and pulls them out of the ground.
That's awesome. That sounds like it was something he'd do.
He just
Solving problems.
just did it on his own. He's like, don't worry about that. And man, they pissed off. And oh gosh.
Well, what did they expect? I mean, they wouldn't do it. I mean, self-help.
It was, he's like, he's like, I know you asked, but just pretend like you didn't tell me that. And I'm like, okay. And then the next day we show up at PT and those trees are gone. He didn't send someone out there to do it. He went and did it himself. Yeah.
That guy's awesome.
But he was awesome. And, that whole assignment, I mean, we did things on our own, and, because we couldn't get support from like CE or anybody else we built that O course. Paul Lombardo built that O course, but, as far as you set him on a course of action of shit you need to do, that dude got results.
Yeah.
Along Highway 85, they were replacing all the telephone poles, and the old ones were just laying on the ground on the side of the road. He was driving through there and stopped and asked one of the workers what they were going to do with those poles, and that guy told him that we could have them. And so every pole from Niceville to Crestview, Paul tried to pick up in the 5-ton, and had the AFI students out there loading those things up for like 3 weeks.
Nice.
That's all they did. And they brought all those things back to the O course. We had a stack of, they were stacked up, and it was crazy. And then we used those poles to build the O course, the new O course.
Yeah.
And he couldn't, like I said, we couldn't get help from CE to stand those poles up. So it was like something you see when they're building the pyramids and whipping the workers to get them to do what they need to do. I mean, that was him. But eventually left there and got to Campbell. I went to Campbell next, and deployed immediately. Finally got out and got on deployment, and that was was good to be out and actually doing some of the job, and but wasn't anything crazy or exciting because, like I said, I was at Campbell and I was the the M&D guy, or M&D North, M&D North senior enlisted dude. So not a lot was going on then. We had 3rd Brigade was on the base, the Rakkasans, with Colonel Steele, the Black Hawk Down.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Captain Steele from Black Hawk Down. He was there. What's it called was there. Pete Hegseth.
Oh really?
Yeah, he was with 187. He wasn't at Spiker. He was at Samara maybe, or somewhere down there. But I remember seeing him at at the briefings or meetings or Cub or Hub or whatever. Every now and then. I didn't know him at the time.
Sure, nobody did then. Yeah.
He was just some lieutenant or captain at the time. I guess he was a captain because he was a company commander. But yeah, he was there. There was a task force element there, and the Rangers were there with, I think it was Devin Rockwell and Jen. Can't think of Jen's first name.
Thomas, right?
But they were Tom Jen, yeah. Yeah, they were there. They were there running that show. But I think they were augmenteeing. But I tried to hang out, get involved in some of the stuff they did, just because knew some of the people there. But for the most part, I was at the op center at the Jock or whatever, doing that kind of stuff. And it was pretty uneventful assignment.
Yeah.
Did that assignment, came back, made senior. ACC started calling, and I think it was Dave Devine was down there at the time. And in fact, it was down at UNTW, and he's trying to figure out, what I'm going to do. He's like, well, you're a senior, so you're going to get a must move, because there was only one senior slot at Campbell, and that was Mark Lutz was in that.
Oh, okay.
Mark was trying to go to Bragg, and they were in the process of converting slots to chief, and there was a bunch of stuff going on. And what they ended up doing was, instead of adding a chief slot, they converted the senior slot to a chief slot, and said I was a must move, so they gave me the choices to go to Bliss or Hood, or I guess I could have gone to Watertown. I think that was the other option. What is that?
Yeah. 10th Mountain.
Drum, Fort Drum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fort
Drum. So so I didn't really want to go up there, and they didn't have a good swim program for Caroline. I didn't want to go to El Paso because, well,
It's the Wild West, and
would have, yeah, and they were just standing that unit up too.
Yeah.
They were just standing it up, and I'm like, well, I want to deploy and do that stuff. So I don't know what they're going to do, stand that unit up. So I'll go to Hood. It's the evil, and they got a good swim program, and man, we'll see how it goes.
yeah.
So, and I guess to back up just a little bit, I had injured my back on the last jump when I was at the Rangers. So, and I ended up having back surgery after I got back from Korea. And the hardware and everything that they put in my back, and what they did to my back, I was unable to pass a airborne or a flight physical from that point on. There are some people that have gotten through that before, no matter what I did, and I don't know if there was some circumstance or something in my record that was different from other people's, but I know other people had waivers for that. I could never get one.
Yeah.
I got a handwritten note from the Surgeon General at Randolph that basically it did say, this is like he said, this is the third time I've seen this application or package or whatever, and it's not going to happen. Kind of, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it said that. So that kept me out of, trying to be the superintendent or taking a, senior position at the 17th or at Bragg.
Right.
So anyway, off to Hood I go, and before I left, when I'm out processing, they said, well, one last thing, we need you to sign the waiver saying that you're agreeing to move when you don't have to move. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, you took the assignment, but you didn't have to. You'd only been on station for 11 months. So I think it was 24 months I had, that I could have stayed on station before I left.
Yeah.
Which everything would have been in place by then. I could have stayed there, which I would have stayed at Campbell if I could have. But I guess it kind of worked out for the best because I ended up leaving. Mark ended up going to Bragg, and Jazz ended up taking the position at Campbell.
Yeah.
And he went there on an exceptional family member, deal. So it's good for him. So,
sure.
That makes it a little easier to stomach.
Right.
And, but damn, if Jazz and I both could have been there, that would have
been
because
awesome.
They eventually, got the senior, and he could have been in the chief spot, and I would have been in the senior slot, and that would have been awesome. But didn't work out that way. So off to Hood I went to the 11th ASOS. At the time there was the 11th, the 9th, the ASOC were all on the base, all in different, not in the same building for whatever reason at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But did that, deployed with 3rd ID, and then deployed with 1st Cav. Then I decided that was enough. So that assignment was I don't know, it was kind of surreal in a way because there was never enough people in any of the squadrons for it to be a full squadron.
Yeah.
Because everybody was deployed, like it is. So you have, each unit's about 40% manned at best, and everybody's running a training program, and everybody's, separately. I just couldn't understand. I'm like, why aren't we combined?
Right.
Like, well, we're supporting different units. I'm like, everybody's deployed, and nobody's supporting the units that are on this base.
Exactly.
I mean, when I went, because I was a division asset, yes, we did, but everybody else was farmed out to whoever, just like, how it goes.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense to me why we have 3 training units. Why don't we all consolidate to one building? And then, that's when the plans came to build the new buildings, and, a bunch of that stuff started happening.
Nice.
But I got to the point where I knew I was going to make chief. I was kind of next in line. I guess nothing's a sure thing, but you kind of know.
Sure.
You kind of know. I mean, it's just based on EPRs and endorsements and all that stuff. So
strats and all that.
strats and all that. Yeah. So I knew that if it was coming to test time, if I tested, I was probably going to make it. And I was at the point where I didn't necessarily want to it would have been more than 5 years. It would have been probably to the end. And I was kind of ready to go. I mean, had I been on the soft side, probably would have been a different story.
Sure.
But, and also, we had been running Atlantic strikes, back when I was at Campbell, was doing the op 4 for the Atlantic strike events, and I carried that over to Hood, and we would go down and support Atlantic strike every year. And Coastal Defense at the time was flying for us down there, contract air support. And they were flying Cessnas with cameras on them, and we were using them to teach Predator.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it started from, because there was, all those assets were deployed. So everybody's getting the new rovers and just all that stuff. And so that's how that exercise started and morphed into something a little bit different over time. But that's what it was initially set up. I think it was called Able Archer to start with. But me and Calvin Swales and Jimbo Michael were running the op 4 lane, and that was a great time. But like I said, the Coastal Defense guys were there, and Scott McPhee, I think, was in the Guard by that point and was working for them. Mm-hmm. So he talked me into, if I get out, he had a job, or they had a job there for me. So I weighted it over my head, and it was kind of it was a really tough decision, and I don't regret it. But at the time, I was really not ready to get out.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity, and I didn't want to make another commitment. So I got out, and we moved back to Columbus, and I went to work at Coastal Defense. And and I'm still there now. So it's been 14 years working there.
Nice.
In the meantime, like I said, I wasn't really ready to get out. So all the guys that worked at a lot of the guys that worked at Coastal Defense were also in the 113th ASOS, and somehow they talked me into going back into the Guard and doing that side for a little while and being the chief at the 113th, which was, oh my gosh, that was insane. That was insane. There are good guys there, but holy cow, the Guard, I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, it was such a different animal than active duty, which I can't imagine that it would be that different, but it was.
Perfect.
Nepotism, people, colonels married to senior airmen, and I think I told you the story before, but like you'd walk into finance and try to get something done, or like, oh, Joni's got to do that. I'm like, who's Joni? Like, well, Joni's not here. Like, where's Joni at? When does she come in? Well, she's in transportation. What are we talking about here? Who is Joni? I'm like, oh, Tech Sergeant Anderson. Like, okay, why is Tech Sergeant Anderson at, she was a staff sergeant when she was here. She wanted to make tech, so she had to go to the transportation squadron. She comes over here every now and then to help us out because she's the only one that knows how to do this. So
weird.
She should be here on Thursday. I'm like,
so
this
weird.
is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. It's crazy. And I was just a part-time, I was, whatever, traditional. So, which is traditionally, a weekend a month, but as for JTACs and for pilots, and it's a little bit different because you got to keep currency and all that stuff.
Right.
So it's you end up over there a lot more, but it was 4-hour drive from the house. So, and I did it for no pay because you can't collect retirement pay and active pay at the same time. So I didn't want them turning my pay on and off, so I just agreed to do it for points, for points towards retirement, which we're going to get those anyway. But so just make sure you pay my travel back and forth and whatever. I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it. It was only, I think the difference was like maybe $60 or something, a paycheck, or it wasn't going to be that. It was not enough to make the to go through the hassle of turning the pay on and off.
Sure.
Got there, made chief, what chief one, did that for 5 years, which was way longer than I thought I was going to do it. But
yeah,
like I said, the unit was great and it was fun. It was being around the guys again and doing all that doing all the stuff that we do. But being a chief on the base was not a good. It was a weird thing because we would have chief meetings on, every drill weekend. We'd have a chiefs meeting, so all the chiefs would show up and they would talk for an hour about how or what going away gift they were going to give to the next chief,
Right.
and how they were going to raise money to purchase that gift. I'm like,
It's like their whole purpose in life.
like, and some of those guys were, were like felt the same way, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, like dudes, I'm only here for a short period of time, and I don't have time to spend a couple hours over here doing this. So,
Yeah.
if we're gonna have a productive meeting, I'll be there, but otherwise,
Send me an email.
I'm not.
Let me-
Yeah. So, and speaking of email, that's the other thing is because you're not there enough, your computer shuts down every time or your credentials run out. So you would spend half a day. The first half a day that I got there, I would have the admin guys in my office trying to get the computer to work. Then you finally get logged in. And then you spend another half a day trying to get a travel voucher done for the weekend. And so you'd waste all your time just doing dumb shit like that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird. But I did that until February 2019. I think is when I stopped doing that. Had a stint in there where I was flying for L3, doing the ISR contractor gig. So I was doing that. I was working for Coastal Defense. Was in the Guard. Had another side company called West Run. So I was running that for a while too. So I got to the point where I was pretty busy
dude,
on a bunch of stuff. So had to cut the Guard away. I knew that they CJ McCormick came there as in the senior position, and he was getting ready to put chief on. So I left so he could take that position. So to be room for that.
Nice.
Which I was really my only reason for being there was so that they didn't get stuck with a non-TAC P chief.
Right.
That was the main reason in the beginning. And how the waiver process took so long to get into that job. By the time I actually got the waiver, I really didn't want to. They really didn't want to do it, but I had made the commitment, so I went and did it.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You said it was like 2 years or something before, from the time you tried to start until you got the job or something.
So from the, it was like a 3-year process, but it really, from the time we submitted the actual package, so to speak, it was over 2 years. And it had to go to Secretary of the Air Force level or whatever to get signed, or whatever that equivalent is on the Guard side.
Yeah.
It took a while, but Colonel Noel called me up and said, "Hey, your paperwork came through. When can you come and sign up?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, I was way deep into civilian stuff at that point."
Right.
So. But I did it, and there were some good guys there. So they even still work with us now. But yeah, it was that was an interesting time because I was just doing too much and getting pulled a bunch of different ways. So I cut the Guard out, and I did probably 4 rotations to Iraq with L3, and that was good. But I got to the point there where I was maybe wanted to be the site lead or something like that, as opposed to flying the sensor every night. But that then I would have to, it was either leave Coastal and do that, like really get involved in that, or quit doing that and keep moving along with Coastal, which I think I made the right choice. But it was kind of, the contract flying was a bunch of good dudes there, but it was like 3 types of people, and it was 3 or 4 divorcee guys that had been divorced 3 or 4 times, and they were looking for extra money to pay child support, or they were looking for extra money to have because they were paying all their money was going to alimony and child support. So you had those guys, and then you had the young guys who were just raking in a bunch of money and single and had no liabilities, and were just living, partying, just living the life of visiting different countries and spending very little time in the U.S. because of tax purposes and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Those guys were just having fun, and they were, the rest of us were living vicariously through their exploits. But
Right.
but and then you had guys like me. There were a few just regular, have a family and it was, I don't know. I was gone enough as it was, and to go away for 2 months, and then I'd come back, go away for 2 months, and come back, and then have to make up all the drills. So I'd spend like 2 weeks, or or longer doing guard stuff, and then try to get caught up on coastal stuff, and then it was time to go back to. So
Man,
it
sounds
it
exhausting,
was time
dude.
it was time to get out of it. So I did, but there's some good dudes there too. Carl Cervania, Max Porras.
Oh yeah.
They were there when I was there. Travis Cruz. Travis Cruz was there. It was a good
Doesn't Bruce
assignment.
Voigt work over there too?
Oh, good. Oh, no, Bruce works with us at Coastal. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Oh, you're talking about L3.
yeah,
Oh, gotcha.
L3. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Coast. So Bruce, I run the aviation department. Bruce runs the unmanned target vehicle side.
Yeah.
Um, so that's we, and then there some exercises where we're combined together and do some of that stuff. But we all live, just there's no central point. We all live, different places. And Calvin Swales is there with us, and Garrett Ames, he was with me at the 113th ASOS. But we other than that, pretty much everyone else is independent contractors, and they're all out. Got guys in Avon Park this week, and out at out at Reno or Fallon, I guess, flying out of Fallon this week. So
Oh, okay.
always something going on with that side, and it's
Yeah, that company's grown a
fun.
lot. I mean, I remember, like you said, in the beginning, it was kind of like a smaller kind of company, but now everybody's using them, and
Well,
and everybody says good things about them too. Yeah, Coastal's really got a good name.
I like to think that we do, and we've had our growing pains, but it's we really take the TACP ROMAD approach to everything. I mean, it's like just get it done, make it happen,
Right.
and make sure the customer's happy. And if it looks ugly behind the curtains, well, we'll try to fix it behind the curtains and make it look better. But just as long as what comes out to the customer, we try to be right by the customer.
Sure.
But it's but I will say, we started off. We had a few Cessnas. When I came on board in 2010, we had 2 Cessna aircraft with cameras on them that we were doing work with, and we were mostly doing ISR stuff. And it was it was some hideous stuff. Like there was a UAS Center of Excellence. This program that was stood up, and they were trying to get the Army, mainly the Army, to want to use UAS and teach them how to use it and how to better work it into the mission set and that stuff. So the UAS Center of Excellence had money, so it wasn't like the Army had to pay for it, because it was paid for through this program. So
Sure.
we would show up and fly for their missions. Some people used us, some people didn't. So there were some nights where we would fly out. We'd be out at NTC, and we would fly and look at an intersection for 6 hours, and not talk to anybody,
Jeez.
not even talk to anyone on the radio, and just that was
What a waste of
horrible.
money for the government,
And then some of them would use us the way, the intel, the way an intel shop would use an ISR asset, and they were good, and you collection decks, and you go out, you'd have, they talk to you and do different things. Well, then we started talking to the JTACs, and we're up flying, hey, hey, if you want, we can replicate other assets also. So then we started putting a fighter pilot in there, and kind of doing that on our own, and kind of maneuvered over. And then they started, it was mainly the Marine Corps that was doing that at the time, but they started figuring out they could fill squares, and they could do training, and they could build scenarios and do all kinds of stuff. So that kind of morphed into how we do now. And I would say we do 5% traditional ISR. Everything else is, it's close air support oriented,
Nice.
CAS oriented. And then we bought some jets, and we're bringing some jets online as part of the. We'll go back a little bit. We teamed up with a company called Air USA, and Air USA had L-39s, and we were going to team up with those guys, and we were going to put our sensors on their jets. So it was going to be their jets, their pilots, our sensors, our sensor operator. and Scott McPhee called me one evening and said, "Hey, I need you to meet me over at Quincy, Illinois. When can you be there?" And I'm like, "Well, how quickly can you need me there?" He's like, early as you can in the morning. So it's an 8-hour drive. So I hopped in the truck, head out over to Quincy, and he's like, "What are we doing?" We're going to put cameras on the jets, or they're putting cameras on the jets, and we're going to help. So I assume I'm going there to advise them on how to best mount a sensor. I don't know about mounting it, but what I need to use, because I've used it in the Cessna before, and I know what I need and how to set it up. But how can we make this work in a jet?
Yeah.
So I show up there, and the mechanic's there, and he hands me a drill and says, "Use any of my tools you want. Here's a drill. We're running these cables now." And I'm like, "What's the drill for?" And he's like, "Oh, you're gonna have to drill into the pressure vessel and run these cables." And I'm like, "I don't know who you think I am."
Wait, what?
But if I give you even a 5-minute spiel about what I know, you're going to realize that I don't know shit about drilling through pressure vessel. And they're like, "Don't worry about it, dude." He's like, "Don't worry about it. We we'll back you up." And at the time, I was kind of young in that department, or that realm of aviation or whatever. So I was, I didn't know what I know now. But I knew that aircraft is governed by the FAA, and you can't just,
You just start drilling holes in them.
It's like, none of that applies. These are all experimental. We can do whatever we want. They're experimental, and we'll sign it off. Don't worry, it's all covered. I'm like, okay. So we went to work on that thing, and it was just like drill some holes and start running cables and set stuff up, and we did it probably the most inefficient way possible.
Yeah.
But it was overkill. We over-engineered everything and
right.
Got it set up, and then we started flying for Air USA, and we did that for a while until it got to the point where the pay structure wasn't working out the way it was supposed to between us and them, and we kind of decided that we needed to do it on our own. So we pulled away from those guys and bought our own jets, and then brought in a company called Code One Aviation and had them mount the sensors and do all that. But how did they do that? They brought me in and asked how we did it on the other jets, and I told them what we did. The only thing is they actually engineered. They took what I said and engineered it and did all the engineering paperwork and all the background stuff.
Oh, okay.
Legalized everything, and learned all about FSDOs and FAA and different what paperwork you got to file and what you got to have to make. Even though it's experimental, there's still a certain amount.
Yeah.
And then once you're trying to get them on contract, you got to follow all the Air Force, all the DoD rules as well. So we learned all that over time. But in the beginning, it was put in. Not only did we put them in the jets, but we started getting new cameras and putting them in the Cessnas and this, that, and the other. And I'm looking at the way they're doing it, and it was Calvin and I just. For every mission, we would spend a week just getting the airplane ready, trying to make it work so that it would work on the mission, and then we'd go out and fly a mission, and all the stuff that we just figured out would break, and we'd make it through that mission and start over in the next one. It was kind of, but it's way different now. Brought in the right people and got all that stuff done the way we're supposed to, and it's but it was eye opening. It's been eye opening, and now we're in the process of we have merged with another company called the Aero Group. And we're in the process of going public now, so that's going to change a lot of things on how we operate and what we do, and an influx of capital to make build up, get more jets and do more stuff. So
nice.
It is going smoothly at this point, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. My other company, West Run, we still have that, and we provide the pilots. So all the pilots. The independent contractor pilots and sensor operators work for us are contracted through us through West Run.
Oh, okay.
And then we that way it's easier for us to maintain the records and everything, all their currencies and everything they got to do, and we do that on our side. And it just keeps Coastal from having to do it. And, and then Coastal maintains the contracts, and Calvin and I are the bridge between the two.
Oh, nice.
So
they just tell you guys what they need, and then you provide it, and they don't have to. They're kind of hands off.
Yeah, well, it's even simple, easier than that because I'm the one that tell me what I need
Right.
because I'm the one writing the proposals and the contracts, and I write all the proposals, the contracts, um, all the pricing. I do all that, and then we have different people who are program managers over different contracts, but for the most part, all that I do all that.
Cool.
So and then I farm it out to. We have we got a couple other companies that sub under us also, that have airplanes that depending on if it's special mission or that we don't have assets for, then we go outside and bring different people in. But as far as the customer is concerned, it's all coastal defense, but there's just different ways to make money in the background on it. So
Nice.
but other than that, I pretty much either traveling for work a lot.
Did you want to go into any of your kind of stuff you're dealing with right now on the medical side, or do you want to talk about any of that, or you don't have to?
Yeah,
I mean,
I kind of always forget about that in the front because I don't try not to dwell on it too much, but it is apparent, and like I know when I see people that I haven't seen for a long time, they're kind of they wonder, dude, what's up? Because obviously I walk with a cane now, and if I'm going long distance or off trail, I'm gonna have I got my cane with me, and Parkinson's has the tremors I've been able to control with medication a lot better lately. They got me on the meds in a pretty good I'm in a pretty good place, so that's good. But I guess it's been a little bit over 2 years now. Is when they finally diagnosed that it's 99.9% sure that it's Parkinson's. It's I had 2 DAT scans. The first one was inconclusive. The second one was DAT scan came back and pretty much solidified that. It's kind of a weird. Kind of talked a little bit about having my first back surgery. When I was deploying to Iraq with L3, I was running a lot while I was there, on the base, running, and I would get about 20 minutes into the run, and my right leg started going numb, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I'd walk a little bit and could walk it out, and eventually got to the point where I would run and would immediately go numb, and I was trying to figure that out, and I just assumed it was part of my back issues, and then my back did start going downhill, and I started losing use of my calves. So I went through the wickets, got back to the neurosurgeon through the VA, which they farmed it out to Ohio State, which was good, through community care. And I went there, and they figured out that the hardware that they'd put in my back in 2002, that hardware had failed, which it had been 16 years at that point. So, I mean, it's only supposed to last 10 or 12 years.
oh, okay.
But both screws on the bottom were broken. The ones around the S1 area, I guess, they broke, and it hadn't shown up on MRIs or any of that prior, but the fusion in that point was not solid, so there was a gap between the fusion that never took, we never knew about it.
Oh, man.
And when the screws broke, it dropped that the whatever millimeter or whatever it was, that gap was there. It dropped and was pinching the nerves and was causing the numbness in my legs, and then it got to the point where I guess both sides broke. I don't know the exact sequence, but and then I lost the use of my calves. Pretty much lost the use of like 90% use of my calves, so I can't flex those at all. I can't lift my foot up and down like that. It's on the left side I can do it if there's no weight on it. On the right side, it kind of just goes off to the side. It's kind of weird. But I got to the point where I couldn't run anymore. Walking was becoming difficult. the neurosurgeon had me set up to go back in and have that fixed once they figured out that the screws had broken. So I had my second surgery. They replaced all the hardware and added, at that point I was L3 or L4, L5, and S1. They added L3. And then 2 years later, they added L2. So it's all fused. There's a cage around it, and a couple spacers, and I don't know. So that's it was weird because I had a tremor in my left leg or my right leg, and I didn't. That's the only place it was manifested at the time. And like I said, we thought it was due to the nerve damage, based on my back being bad.
Yeah.
And when I had that second surgery, I woke up from the second surgery, and my right leg the tremor was not there anymore, but my right arm, it was manifested in my right arm. And the doctor said, I don't really think that's possible, but that was what was going on,
Yeah.
And I don't think it just switched. I think what happened is I lost a lot of because of the nerve damage in my leg from that second surgery. I think the tremor would probably still be there if the nerve damage wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
I just think it's masked because of that.
Sure.
But my right hand, it gets pretty bad. But it's controlled with meds. And at that point, I started going, I went through, they were trying to, is it an essential tremor? Is it this and that? Is it psychosomatic? I had to go to see the shrink and all that stuff. And,
Yeah.
and then of course they get into PTSD and this, that, and the other. And like, pretty good on all that, I think. So, and they were trying to rule that out. And then they said, well, we're going to schedule you for another DAT exam, just, DAT scan, just to see, that's when they scan your brain, put fluid in it. And if it settles in a certain area, it confirms Parkinson's. So when they did that, then it came back, it was confirmed. All that stuff kind of happened, and at the same time as this was when COVID was going on. So I was going to have the third surgery. I was scheduled for surgery on, say, January 5th or something like that. And it was December 30th, and I had to go for part of the pre-surgery or whatever. I had to get a COVID test. So I had to pull up, go to the Ohio State pull-up center or whatever, and they come out and swab your nose, do all that stuff for COVID. And they call me and come back and it's like, you got COVID.
Jeez.
And I'm like, okay, I don't have any symptoms. And they're like, well, we got to postpone your surgery. This was December 2020, I guess. We got to postpone your surgery and, wait 30 days and we'll reschedule whatever. But if you got COVID, you can't do it. So I, like I said, I never had any symptoms or anything. I quarantined because that's back when you still didn't know what was going on with COVID and whatever. But it didn't bother me. I had no issues at all. Zero issues. I go and have surgery, and then I was doing a follow-up with the VA in April. Was it April? May and March. Follow-up with them in March about my back or whatever. So I go there and they're like, hey, we got the COVID shots are out. We need you to stop and get a COVID shot. So I got the COVID shot, and then 3 days later I had a follow-up phone appointment with the doctor, and I went and got a COVID shot, and I asked them, and this was early on in the COVID shots.
Yeah.
And I asked them if, I said, I just had COVID, 60 days ago, less than, 65 days ago. And they're like, no issue, no problem. 3 days later, I have to call in to do a follow-up with my doctor at the VA. after I'd gone down there, I had to call him back. And we're talking. He's like, "Is there anything else going on?" And I said, "Well, my head feels kind of weird. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I'm hypoxic." And he's like, "What do you mean hypoxic?" Like, my pulse ox is good. My breathing, my temperature, all that is fine. I said, "But I feel like I'm hypoxic." And he's like, how would you know if you're hypoxic or what?" I said, "Look, in the military, airborne, blah, blah, blah. I've been through the altitude chamber,
Yeah.
all that stuff. I know what my hypoxia signs are." I said, "My fingers are tingling." And I said, "That's what it feels like. I'm not saying that I am hypoxic.
Right.
That's what it feels like. There's anything that touches my head feels weird." And I just got this weird stiff. It's something's weird's going on. He's like, "Well, you should probably go to the emergency room." Because I said, I don't, and have it checked out just in case. And I said, "Okay." So I show up at the emergency room. I'm not thinking anything of it. They take blood work and they come back and they say, "We think you had a heart attack."
No way.
And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean you think I had a heart attack?" They said, "Well, we got to do a different test and we're going to check it out. But we need to check your troponin levels because, if they're up, then that's a sign of a heart event or something going on with your heart." And so I'm sitting there in the hospital, in the little room at the ER or whatever, and you know how now whenever they do lab results, they show up on your phone, My Health, whatever app you have.
Right.
So the results from this blood test show up before the doctors come in and talk to me.
Really?
So
That's awesome.
That's how quickly they showed up. So I'm there and I bring it up, and it says your troponin levels are at this point, and it says heart attack is imminent. And I'm sitting there thinking, is this thing saying I'm getting ready to have a heart attack? Is that what this is? Like, I'm like, are they going to come in and talk to me or tell me what's going on? And I'm kind of freaking out inside a little bit. Like I feel like maybe I should push a button or something. I don't know. Is this when people come in and get serious? And they came in and they said, "No, they kind of read it wrong. It's not saying it's heart attack is imminent. It's what it's saying is the problem. You most likely had a heart event in the past."
Oh, okay.
Because I guess it measures something going on, creatinine or whatever in your system, and it can tell that there was damage to your heart on some level. So, so they draw more blood, ended up doing an MRI with contrast and an ultrasound, and did my throat, did all that stuff, just checked everything out, and did stress tests and just all kinds of stuff. And that's what it was. They were doing the plaque screen or whatever to see what, if there was any blockages anywhere or anything. And my plaque counts were 0, and which is awesome. They said, well, if there anything did happen, luckily your plaque counts are low, it wouldn't be that big of an issue. But then they just ruled that it was, myocarditis, and it was most likely from the COVID shot. But
jeez.
So I didn't get any more COVID shots.
Doubt.
Thought that might be a good idea to not do that anymore.
Right.
But it was weird because I'm like, I got so many things going on. Like, they're telling me I've got COVID, or I got COVID, possibly had a heart attack. I just found out I got Parkinson's disease, and all this is going on right now, and I can't tell what symptoms belong to what.
Right.
Asking questions. So it and I could tell. I mean, my body was broken down for a good while, and I was still working, still doing what I could, but I was running into people, and people were looking at me like, "Holy cow, dude, you look like you're on death's door." And then
I was surprised when you had the cane, and I was.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. You know how it is when you run to a buddy. You're like, you don't want to. If they don't want to talk about it, you don't want to press them. So I was just like, trying to, if you wanted to say something, you could. I didn't want to press you on it, but yeah.
So I don't mind talking about it, and it's it's kind of my new normal. I am able to work out, and I can go to the gym, and I can do all that stuff. I just can't do a lot of stuff with my legs.
Yeah.
So skipping leg day, that was
Now you got an excuse to do it.
I got an excuse. But running was more. I was a runner. I like to run.
Yeah.
I take having that taken away kind of, that kind of stings a little bit, but I just can't really find anything else that fills that square, so to speak.
Yeah.
That, the way running would do. But I can still work out and do that stuff and back to where I can at least try to make myself fit and healthy as possible. But it's just a change. But,
Yeah.
hell, it happens to all of us, on some level at some point in time. So
There's a couple of guys that I know going through the same thing you are. Do you have any advice for them, or do you have any what's worked, what hasn't worked? I mean, any kind of tips or anything that's helped you?
well, as far as Parkinson's go and the shakiness and all that stuff and the keeping that at bay, my drugs or the meds that I'm taking, cinnamon, I think it's called, and it's like carbidopa, levodopa is what it is, and that seems to help. But as long as I stay away from caffeine or anything that would make me shaky anyway.
Right.
People always used to tease me and joke all the time because my leg was always shaking, or I'm always tapping my foot or moving. I mean, I was like a wet chihuahua on the back porch. But for that, I hate to say it, but the meds are what the only thing that keeps at it. Really keeps the tremor away. But I tried not to let it get amplified by if it's cold out or if I'm caffeine. I try to limit my coffee and that stuff, and just healthy living, eating right, and all that stuff is obviously. As far as my back goes, I mean, just what I think most people need to realize is what you do when you're young can definitely come back to bite you when it's your back. And I know there are a bunch of people in the career field that have back, shoulder, knee, ankle, all those issues.
Yep.
It's you're never going to tell any of us to slow down.
Right.
I trained for them. I ran the marathon, the Air Force Marathon in 2015, and I definitely overtrained for that. And that probably did more damage to my back and I don't know.
Yeah.
I just overtrained for that. Got myself into doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. The VA has been. I've had a pretty good experience with the VA. I know a lot of people have had bad experiences, but the place I go is pretty good. They take a good interest in you, and as far as that side goes, as far as getting compensation and making sure that was on par in the way it's supposed to be, that was tough because when I first submitted, with my back the way it was initially when I got out, I think I got 10% or 20% is what it came back.
Really?
Was the initial rating, and so I refiled, and that eventually that got bumped up. It was a retired sergeant major that Kyle, my boss at Coastal Defense, Kyle Stambro. He had a retired sergeant major that was helped him out, and he's helped out a bunch of combat controllers, and he took my package and wrote it up and told me what it needs to say and how it needs to say it, and he basically said, "Here, I wrote all this stuff up. Line out anything that you don't like, and sign it and send it forward." And that worked. That worked. That got me up to. It finally got me up to 70% at that point. And I just kept applying, had another surgery, and that stuff would get added to it. It got up to 80. It wasn't until the PACT Act or whatever, I think that's what it's called, the PACT Act. Once I got confirmed Parkinson's, then that, the PACT, that was part of the PACT Act, and that got percentage up to 100%, which was good. But it just took a while to work through that system. But it was one of those things where at first I'm good.
Right.
I didn't do anything special. I don't need anything special. And that sergeant major pulled me aside and said, "Look, get it in your head of what number you want, and don't worry about how you get there. There, there's people out there that are getting more for less.
Yeah.
But the money is set up. It's there for that reason. The money's there. You're not taking it away from anybody else.
Right.
It's by mandate, that money's got to be available for everybody that's in the military. I mean, it's there, whether it gets used or not. It's just there. I mean, there's weird things. They gave me 10% for my back the first time, 10% for residuals, and then they gave me 10% for a scar on my head. And I'm like, how does that?
How is it equal? Yeah, like I mean, why is it's so weird that
and the scar on my head, and it's in my records. It's not that it's hidden. I mean, it says hitting head with beer bottle.
how is that the same as like a major back surgery?
And I have
TBI of some sort. I don't know.
I bust my back up on a jump was what caused it. Mission related, and they're going to give me 10% for that. But because some guy running his mouth at a party in my house, and I threw him out the door, and he hit me with a beer bottle. They're going to give me the same amount for that.
Seems weird.
And that's when he said, think about the number that you want, and however they come up with the number, just don't. If it's for getting hit in the head with a beer bottle, take that 10%.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course.
But
yeah,
there's something else that you deserve that for. I'm like, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff's legit.
For sure.
The beer bottle was that was another Fort Hood story. But
who was it? Can you tell me? Who hit you?
Who was it?
Do you remember?
It was in the military, dude. It was there was a car dealership in town, Connell Chevrolet, and it was the guy that owned that car dealership. It was his son.
Oh, okay.
He was like college age or whatever at the time.
Yeah.
We had a party. We had a house there, and we're throwing down just like you normally do. And it was, I remember Ray Hadaway was at NTC, and his girlfriend was there at the party, and he was checking up on her.
Oh, okay.
And I was on the phone talking to him.
That's
on the steps, and the door's right here, and I'm on the steps, and these guys just kind of blast through the door. They're loud, and they're like, hey, we're here to party. And I didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
And I said, hey man, can you keep it down? I'm on the phone. Keep it down. And he's like, that's kind of rude. And I said, look, I don't know who you are. There's girls over there, and there's beer over there. Have fun.
Yeah.
But but keep it, and he just kept running his mouth. So I stepped off the step and punched him in the face and took him out the door. And somewhere in that, he hit me with a Moosehead bottle. And I just remember getting hit and I'm thinking, gosh, he did not hit me that hard. He could not have hit me that hard.
Yeah.
So I thought his buddy hit me from the side.
Oh, okay.
So I stood up and hit that guy. and then everybody spills out at that time, everybody's spilling out the door. Sure. And it's a little bit of a melee right there going back and forth, and they run out and get in their truck and take off. And I think Greg nearly threw a brick through their back windows. They were taking off. Everyone else was pretty much okay, but yeah. I got 29 staples.
What?
29 staples in my head and 14 in like on my skull on the interior. They did 14 stitches, and then like 29 staples. It goes from, I mean, it's hard to see, but it's like from here to.
Oh my gosh.
Shave off. So it was a good hit.
Yeah.
I mean, it laid me open. It laid me open pretty good. So in fact, I remember being at the hospital, and the surgeon or the doctor was kind of pissed off because I mean, I had a few beers.
Yeah.
Go figure. And he's like, I don't have time to waste on this, so you can either let me numb it up and it's going to take about an hour, or I can just put these staples in and be done with it. I said, let's get after it. He put all those staples in. I didn't feel most of them until the end.
Yeah.
Once it got closer I got to the front, you could feel those.
Oof.
But yeah.
29, man.
But it's almost as, I mean, shit, well, twice as many on my back, but I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah. Well, that beer bottle story is a good old capper to the whole interview. did the whole
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, that was a man, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, Fort Hood was fun. I mean, hell, Scott and I could probably, Loescher, we could come on here and tell those stories for an hour. Too. Like I guess everybody could, but
Those are the kind of stories that we don't want out there, though. Like Schleich and I had a good time in Korea, but we don't want anybody knowing about it. You know.
Yeah. Yep. That's that one's about as far as it needs to go because they're secret no form.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But cool. So I just saw the one Hal Sullivan, the one you uploaded.
Oh yeah.
Looking to watch that one.
Yep.
That's a good dude too.
Yeah. Real good guy.
Remember him when he was up in Alaska? He was up in Alaska when I first came in. He was in Alaska. I think him and Kibby were competition partners.
That's right. Yeah, he mentioned that in the interview. Yeah. And I was like, man, you got to be in some pretty good shape to hang with Kibby. I mean, Kibby, he's a stud.
Kibby was a beast. Holy cow, Kibby was a beast. In fact, his son was just calling me out on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because Kibby was I guess Kibby said to him, that I was never able to beat him on the ruck march at the competition. Like, yeah, but I used to outrun him on our runs when we were instructors. So that dude was awesome.
Yeah, that's what I remember about you and him. Were like just the comps and anything. You guys could just run like gazelles, man. Just so super fast and like the old course was like you just smoked through it. It was amazing.
I loved doing that old course, and that was pretty good at it.
Yeah,
that's one thing I can brag about that.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. This has been great. I appreciate you taking your time to come on and especially at the end there. I mean, that's not easy to talk about. And I know some other guys that are probably out there dealing with the same kind of stuff, and having you on here to talk about it, may encourage them to seek help or be more vocal about it. So I appreciate it.
Definitely seek help. I mean, it's if it definitely is Parkinson's or that related, you gotta. I don't say how you could not seek help because you would fall apart.
Right.
But yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on, and I enjoyed it, and like I said, I appreciate all the ones that you've done before, and just what you're capturing is great. Good way to save our history.
Yeah.
If anything for me, let me know. I'm available 24/7.
Okay. Sounds good. Same here. If you need anything from me, just let me know.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Okay, see you, brother.